All right, so welcome to another episode. This time, with me is Volamel as usual, and with Volamel is Yiska. Both of them are Overwatch content creators, last of a dying breed, or so I've been told. Right? So, uh, I figure I should get them on the show before they become big, before they become analysts, and then it becomes impossible to get them to talk about very specific internal things that are actually interesting, but they can't actually speak to usually. So there's a shit ton we could talk about, but I guess we'll go to the meat of it, which is the playoffs, right? The playoffs are happening, and before we actually get into the 6 teams that survived this entire strenuous struggle, we have to talk about the format, because Volamel was telling me the format is actually quite weird, at least compared to any other esport I know of. So it's spread out across like 7/11 to 7/28, so it's like 3 weeks thereabouts. And basically, the first half of one match of the quarterfinals we played, and one day, the next day after that, the first half of the second quarterfinals we played, and then 2 days later or 3 days later, they will each be completed on a separate day. So the question, I guess, is how do you think this will affect? How do you think this? What do you even think of this? Because this is like such a strange idea. Because in regular sports, obviously there are like in the NBA playoffs, like you do go from like court to court, but that's like an entire game played at each court, whereas this is like half of a series played.
Sure, yeah, exactly. It's kind of strange even looking at it from like a, season 3 perspective when they do want to kind of integrate the movement and having like home team advantage.
Mm-hmm.
Because you're going to have if they stick with this format, which, following the same logic, I kind of assume that they're going to have to change it at some point, because if we look at it, they're playing on one court one day and then traveling, going to play and finishing their match, a day later on a court, but they also are playing a match immediately after that if it becomes like a tied series. So it's a 1-1 and
Mm-hmm.
they have to play at the same court again, and it doesn't make much sense, and I don't understand why you would implement a system now that you're just going to have to change later. Like, why wouldn't you kind of gear the system for longevity and not necessarily for what works right now? And even then, it doesn't really work. It doesn't really make much sense now, because you're giving another match another whole day of preparation, whereas the other team doesn't get that. But if you stagger the matches day in and day out, you still kind of keep that same variety for the fans, and you also don't give the kind of an unfair advantage to another series entirely. So it's weird. I don't think it's necessarily like horrible, but it's just very odd for fans of just any other esport to kind of get into this.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's also very weird. Imagine you're a viewer or a visitor during these matches, especially on the second day, and you're like, you could be there anywhere from, let's say a best of 5 is like 2 hours, then to 4 hours for the first match, and then is it also that they play the second semifinal on the same day as well? Then
no, they'll play for this week. They'll be playing Wednesday. They'll skip Thursday entirely. They'll play Friday and Saturday. So on Wednesday, they're playing one best of 5 for both sets. So Boston, Philly will play one best of 5, and then Los Angeles and London will play another best of 5, and then the day will be over. Thursday we skip. Friday, Boston, Philly play their series, and they could, with the potential of having 2 best of 5s there. It could just be one game, and it'll be over. And then on Saturday, same thing with LA and London, where they play and finish the series.
But still, having basically double the potential length of that, not only for the visitors there, but also for the players, is ridiculous in what it actually asks of them and how different the skill set is. Because historically, we know, if we remember Runaway against Lunatic High, famously, Runaway was pretty much stomping them into the ground until apparently, I guess, Cox ran out of energy or vocal cords, and like a 5-hour final or something, a complete endurance race.
Yeah.
This this is at least also 4 hours, right?
Mhm.
And
barring
pretty
any
much-
any like weird mechanical issues, because that was the big thing in that final. Is the reason why it spent 5 hours is they had problem with PCs and some kid ate too many grapes and it was just a mess.
Yeah, and it's basically it's asking very, very different skill sets. Basically, what is what I'm saying. So it could also the amount of tells you have to make towards the next opponent in the bracket, them having basically double the information. Because keep in mind, this is a completely new patch, a completely new experience. Getting more information from your opponent is super valuable, right?
Mhm.
So
live data too. So it's like the data the semifinalists will get is by far the best. So it's like a huge advantage for anybody who's first seed. And in this case, it would be NYXL and Valiant, right? And it's, I don't know, it's just strange, just from a viewer's perspective, because you expect it to like finish within, like, generally when you think about formats, TOs generally want to keep it as simple as possible, and the reason for that is because if you can't explain a format to a casual viewer within 1 to 2 sentences, you've lost them like permanently.
Yeah.
Right? And that's kind of the problem I have with this format is like, yeah, you have to explain it to me in like 3 to 4 sentences. And then I'm like, okay, wait, so how does, like, it's a bit too confusing, I guess, is my inherent problem with it. And then there's also the point you pointed out, I was like, it's asking of a completely different sort of task compared to the rest of the season. So it feels, I mean, I guess in general playoffs are like that, but this feels more extreme than the other examples we know of.
Yeah, 100%. Like it does kind of mimic traditional sports in a sense, but there again, like I mentioned, like sooner or later this is going to have to be changed, whether it's season 3, whether it's season 4, whenever they decide to kind of force players to try to travel. But even looking at other esports, this has no bearing, and the only other time we've seen a format similar to this has been in Australia, I think, for the OPS finals, or when Ardiant and Flashlux and Blank played.
Mm-hmm.
They all had like a weird best of 5 or a best of 3 of best of 5s, and it was still kind of jarring. But then, and the only pro that I can see from this is that it really irons out exactly who is the best team overall, and not necessarily kind of like a tournament structure. It really is going to prove that the winner of that match is probably the better team.
The question is, it's still so weird that the question. What question are you actually answering there? Is it the best team that plays Overwatch in a best of 4 setting that we usually have during the season, and then theoretically best of 5 because you have the decider match? Or is it the endurance race? Or is it the short-term preparation? Is it the long-term preparation?
Sure, yeah.
Like the amount of skill sets we're comparing here, it's just, I feel like it's so all over the place that, yeah, in the end, basically, yes, you have a name for it, but I still can't be sure what exactly it was that we were comparing,
Mm-hmm. It's
yeah.
like, it's just so confusing, I guess. I mean, I guess I'll have to see it play out because I can't really think of an example where it's like this in esports.
Yeah.
And even in sports, it works out a bit differently just because of how those games work, right? So, I guess I'll just have to see it to figure out. But like my general guess is like at some point, I feel like this format specifically is going to be testing endurance more than the rest of the skill sets, I think.
Mm-hmm. 100%.
Like that's my
it's gonna test like coaching and bench, like how deep is your bench, how skilled is your bench players, because I think players are going to want to play, but I don't think it'll be feasible to have them play a bajillion best of 5. So when you have a team, and I don't want to jump ahead into the match discussion, but when you have a team that doesn't have a ton of players, like London Spitfire, for example,
mm-hmm.
you have to wonder, if this goes to game 3 of a best of 5 or a best of 3 of best of 5s, they've already played potentially 10 games.
I didn't even think about this, but there's a universe where basically London is still intact with 11 players,
mm-hmm.
and Valiant play them in the first best of 5. They win that. lose the second one, and now they are completely, so it's the second day. They're completely reamed out from the first series. It was very close, and then Hurek steps onto the stage and outplays the likes of, I don't know, like Fate or whatever. Definitely better players, because this kid is completely exhausted. I don't want to see that. I don't want to see a legitimately inferior player dominating a much better player simply because he's exhausted.
Just
it's
gotta get
so
your Hurek.
whack.
Just get him in.
Like I've actually seen this happen, and it was actually just like a GSL group stage, right? And for those who don't know, a GSL group stage is basically just a double elimination with 4 players, best of 3, right? But what happened was, in the losers of this group stage, this was back in 2012 during the height of the Broodlord Infesta era. So that kind of gives you a concept of how long these games could last, and it was a Zerg player in this game, right? Zerg versus Terran. And so basically this one best of 3 lasted approximately 4 hours.
By the way, just for the Overwatch viewers that don't know what Brutal Infesta is, basically Infestas are Zaryas that always have graph.
It's true.
And also always shoot dragons at the same time. So
and it's actually easier to execute than you would imagine too. So
yes, it was.
Like it's
I was there. I played it. It was not hard.
We had this for 1 season, but in StarCraft, how long was it? Like several months.
It was quite a few turns.
It was like an year and a half technically. Unless like it really depends on when you want to count it, because like it technically existed the second they patch it, but it didn't like popularize until a little bit later, right? And so the entire problem with it is like, if you didn't somehow all in the Zerg, like it would take you fucking forever to maybe win, right? And so this particular game I'm talking about was between Gumiho and Lucira. They play 4 hours, right? And you can kind of tell by the end, like both of them have played to like peak max level, because that's considered like one of the all-time great series, despite the fact that neither of them are like all-time great players. But they are both reamed out by the end, and then Gumiho barely wins at the end, and then goes on to play the decided match and gets like swatted out because he has like nothing left in him, right? And that's just like one day. We're talking potentially imagine like London Spitfire. Like if they somehow make the finals, they're gonna be reamed the fuck out. Like there's nothing gonna be left inside of them. And then NYXL is just gonna like run, like assuming NYXL makes it there, they're just gonna like run over them like like that's kind of how I imagine this is gonna go. Like when I think of the way this is set up, it's like an endurance test on a level we haven't necessarily seen before.
Yeah, the problem I have with this is basically, the usual chimp, right? You sit in front of an oven, the plate is very hot, it touches the plate, it hurts, right? Usually doesn't have to touch the second time. Now, Blizzard employees are like, yeah, that stage final where in season 1 where London had to play like 2 best of 5s in a row, and somehow by the miracle of pure power of will won that. The pain is so good. Let's touch it again. Let's do it once again for several other series. Yep. Nothing learned. Yeah, nothing learned.
It's actually a very Blizzard lesson. You'll come to accept this over time. They've done this for years. At least I've come to accept it. Like this is like nothing new. There's so many lessons and problems they have repeated over time throughout the various esports titles they've launched. Right, so it's as if the left hand doesn't speak to the right in their case. But yeah, this is like, I don't really like it. Like I personally do believe like the more extensive the format, generally the better it is. But like there's a point where you actually go overboard and you're testing something completely different, and I think we've already gone past that point like 2 best of 5s ago. Yeah. So that's kind of my problem with this entire format, right? So I guess we'll have to see, but my initial guess is like somebody's gonna get destroyed here, and it's not gonna look pretty the farther you go in. And that's like the biggest problem I hate is like you want your finals to be the best match, and this kind of ensures that it will not be.
And let's not kid ourselves. Why is that the way it is, right? Because it's logistical issues of getting the arena for another day, potentially whatever. I'm not sure if we're still too small scope, but this felt like something that an endeavor like the Overwatch League should solve, right? Now you have the big teams behind that with the name recognition, the owners or whatever. That should be within a possible scenario that you're getting the optionality for a third day in an arena where you're, I mean, they are solving it in NBA playoffs somehow, right?
Yeah.
So it's I mean, there are some obstacles that are different in esports. For instance, more international audience, I imagine, so it's harder to get people to the arena for a third day if they're from Europe or whatever, right? But still, this seems like it would have been pretty impressive, or rather a message to the esports world that Blizzard is serious about pushing this to the next level. And now it's,
I mean, they're serious, but it's like you can kind of tell it's like they've learned nothing in a sense. Like they keep, like it's always like two steps forward, like 3 steps back with these guys. Like, oh, that was good, and then, oh my god, why'd they do this again? It's kind of my experience.
It's strange too, because when you look at like the overall schedule, it seems like they wanted to stick to like prime time streaming hours. So on Wednesday they're streaming it, and this will just be an EST, so just kind of keep that in mind. For Wednesday they're streaming the first match at 8, and then the second match tentatively at 10 p.m. And then on Friday similarly from 8 to 10, and then on Saturday they're kind of going back to the original regular season kind of schedule where they stream at 4 to 6. So I don't know if it was maybe a strategical kind of, we want to put this on prime time and this is the logistic issue of trying to do that, but I don't think that that's worth it when you, again, are playing for the prestige. And I think it's kind of sacrificing, not competitive integrity, but I think you're giving yourselves more problems than what you need, especially from just like a player's perspective and kind of a fan perspective. You know, you might not be able to, I think you could stream this every day at 4 to 6 from Wednesday, Thursday, or Wednesday, Friday, and Saturday, and just stagger out the games and just have a better format, so you don't have these weird, like, okay, but these teams don't play today, these teams play Saturday, and we're not playing Thursday, but what happened to Thursday? Why is there a gap in between? Like, there's so many questions. It's so strange.
These times, man, me or all Europeans watching this like this.
Yeah, exactly.
Like,
it's completely ridiculous. I mean, the thing is, what most annoys me about all of this is that they sacrifice potentially the optionality of that. Take the same resources, get a slightly less prestigious arena, and you're getting that done. And you're sacrificing name recognition of the arena for competitive integrity. Sorry that I'm not a fan of that, right?
Yeah.
If you're doing that trade-off.
Yeah, it's just so strange. Like, I don't like it's like one of those weird decisions that Blizzard sometimes makes, at least specifically in Overwatch League, just because if they have like much grander ambitions for this game compared to the other games they've launched, right? So this is just like one of them. It's like, I'm not really sure about this in general. Like, I'm finding really hard to think of, like, besides like the monetary value maybe, but even the monetary value doesn't make sense to me. So it's like, it's hard for me to figure this one out, right? Like, why did they set it up this way when they, because this has probably been set in motion like months ago, right? So
I would hope so.
Right, so it's just a very I don't know, I'm just not a fan of it, but I'll wait to see how it plays out, I guess. Right. So I guess even before we actually go to the teams that have somehow survived, there is the fact that another patch has come out. So
quite a few, if we think about it, because this is we were formerly playing on stage 4 patch, which was 1.22, and now we're skipping all the way to 1.25 with kind of half the patch enabled with symmetric completely reworked, but we can't play here, so it'll be interesting because there's quite a few changes that could make a difference, or it could just be McCree changes where we increase his Deadeye range, and I don't know what even that means.
So the changes are coming out before the playoffs, though, right? Or
what do you mean?
Wait, no, I'm thinking something else. Yeah, so basically nobody. Man, this is like such a Blizzard thing to do too. Like,
patch before the playoffs, grand finals, new patch, guys. Here we go.
It's like basically, like, it is technically impossible for them to like not patch the game for however long the Overwatch League lasts, just because like obviously you have to change it just to keep casuals interested in the game, and because at least in this type of game, I think you have to change it. Like it's just like my own guess on how like game design works. Like I've never seen like basically the old school style of like you don't patch it anymore has died out like a long time ago. So that's just there must be like some incentive behind that. Maybe it's just you get more you get more investment, you get more players into the game, whatever, right? But like even, like it doesn't seem like unreasonable. I guess is my way of saying it, like to not have the stage 4 patch and to have the playoffs be on the same patch. I don't think it's that unreasonable, but obviously it's too late for that. The ship has sailed. The dice have been rolled. So you guys got to tell me what the new patch is about. Like, what do you think is coming?
I mean, I don't know if you want to go through all of the changes, but I kind of wrote down a few of them. Obviously, here we are. So there's new Hanzo. Hanzo's coming in, should be a big splash. Because we're kind of getting caught up with patches. Patch 1.23, he came out, was very, very strong, and then immediately was kind of toned back. So I don't know exactly how strong this Hanzo that we're going to be seeing is, because we haven't seen, I don't believe, any tournament play on this specific patch, because Contenders Trials reverted back to 1.22 as well, I believe. Mm-hmm. I know they went back to a patch, but I can't exactly remember which patch it was. But we haven't seen new nerfed Hanzo, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Okay.
We're also seeing the Ana changes come through, so she'll have 4 more bullets in the clip, so from 10 to 14. She'll have her projectiles will now pass through allies while at full health, which could be interesting. I don't know if it's going to be huge in her pick rate effectiveness, but it could be interesting. What do you think, Yiska? Do you think this is going to be?
No.
Don't think so. No reason to be upset that Seoul didn't make it to playoffs and Roger Owens.
I mean, Ryu Hong's already been buried. May he rest in peace.
Yeah.
Continuing, we've got Orisa. Her ultimate charge, Supercharger, has been its cost reduced by 15%, which it's pretty good. Obviously, Supercharger, much Yiska will obviously tell you it's quite impactful.
Yeah, that's actually nuts. So the only redeeming factor about that ultimate was that it really wasn't up that often.
Mm-hmm.
Right? So it is statistically, in many ways you could measure it, the strongest ultimate in the game. Mm-hmm. So the amount of team fights you win when that thing is activated, or rather used, is higher than Junkrat Tire, which already super busted. Right?
Yeah.
But Junkrat Tire also comes up more often, so you would probably argue it's a more impactful ultimate more regularly.
Mm-hmm.
Now, if they actually lowered the time and 15%, I mean, yeah, it's pretty impactful, I would say. I think that what's 50%? It's probably at least one more per map, where you have a 69% win rate or something for the fight.
Yeah.
So that's pretty nuts.
Could be even more than that, depending on the player or the compositions that are being played.
For sure. Yeah. The map is going to be a huge factor, and we'll get into that in a little bit. And then I think we've got the McCree range change on Deadeye. I don't think that's going to be super impactful.
Oh, no.
I don't think it's going to see any boost in McCree play at all. Obviously, if you're going to play him, you're going to play him. It's not going to be because of the Deadeye change.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And then Doomfist, he gets a bonus movement speed of 50 extra %, up from 150 to 200% during Meteor Strike, which means that he'll be able to position his ultimate a little bit faster, which is great. And then his passive, whenever he uses an ability, he gains like a partial shield that stacks up. He gets 5 extra shield per normal ability used. So that could be kind of potentially dangerous when it comes to certain teams, namely probably LA. But yeah.
Yeah.
But I think that's all of the big ones. I could be forgetting some, but I think that's most of them.
No, but in effect, what it basically means is you're probably still going to see a lot of Zarya Hanzo comps.
Okay.
That's basically the big change. We already saw them a little bit because
it's a good
pros
combo.
were also playing. Yeah, the combo is just pretty good, right? It's basically that theory about Hanzo and so Graviton and Dragon has been in the community for a while. So, for instance, let's say you defended hardcore, so you've defend point A on King's Row, full hold. Now you don't actually need to run your full strategy that you would run in order to complete the map the quickest. What you can do is just go Zarya Hanzo and have a very safe push once both of those characters have an ultimate. Now that wouldn't likely be the fastest time on average, but you don't need fast if you just need to cap point A or just get a blip. And that theory continues to be true, that in a sense that now Hanzo gets his Dragon obviously ridiculously often. We've seen players use it even without Graph pretty effectively, just knowing the geometry of the map. And it's actually quite interesting that it's now getting a little bit more CS-y in that sense, because CS is only geometry.
Yeah.
And like, for instance, Seagull comes to mind, that got like a multi-kill through walls on King's Row, I believe it was. So that's pretty lethal as well. And I mean, the abilities are still pretty nuts in the sense of, for instance, as I wouldn't trust a Winston, for instance, to dive a Hanzo solo and get away with that, right? He also, it's not even that just a Storm Arrow, the E, but it's the mobility he gets with the double jump is ridiculous. So it's basically, so the Winston tries to jump on top of him to do the damage. You could argue that better Winston players would sort of, influence that. At the same time, better Hanzo players then jump in the direction that's best for them to get away. And the jump is basically as such that he jumps up, and the second jump is enough movement speed, basically what it provides, in that it gets outside of Tesla range. So he's very hard to kill because of that. And at best, a Winston can hope to delay a Hanzo, not really kill him.
I think that, well, obviously to that point, I think you're completely right. Obviously, Storm Arrow has had its arrows, the damage reduced on it just by a little bit, but I still don't think you're going to see too terribly much Winston on Hanzo action. But what is interesting is the fact that Brigitte did get her ability toned back. I think this is 100 rally instead of 150 rally, so I don't know if dive is going to become super popular, and that's going to be the big question for a lot of these teams, for me at least. Is whether or not dive comes in. It could impact the overall finals a lot more than whether if Hanzo just stays in and we're playing double sniper, kind of pick and kind of slow composition, something that's a little bit more mild in tempo. I think that you should be able to pretty easily predict the finals for the most part. But if dive is still, it kind of resurges a little bit. Comes back in popularity a little bit more because of Brigitte's absence, if she is absent. I think that it's going to throw a big wrench in the plans, and I think this could possibly be a very wide open meta where we see a whole slew of different compositions and a lot of different strategies, varying from heavy tank compositions that are a little bit more slow and a little bit more methodical. Dive, pick, Orisa Junkrat, Orisa Roadhog, shoot triple DPS could actually be okay. It could be very, very strange on what this final brings. If people aren't too high on Brigitte, I think she's probably the crux of that.
Do we know which patch Contenders is going to be played on?
Not off the top of my head, no. I would assume it's probably the same one with Symmetra disabled, but I'm not sure.
Yeah, that's an interesting question, because also for scrim partners of these playoff teams. Now, I mean, immediately you would think, okay, that's a problem, right? If only the 6 teams are playing right now, then that's sort of problematic to prepare for the playoffs. Though I've heard that a couple of Overwatch League teams actually go back to at least a half or 3/4 scrim schedule come July. For instance, I believe Outlaws is back on the grind basically before playoffs start up again. And yeah, that shouldn't cause too much trouble to the playoff teams.
Yeah, I checked. Basically, contenders are all on 1.24. Playoffs will be on 1.25. So take that for what you will. I'm not exactly sure if that's enough, I guess. right?
Yeah. Not a fan of all this mishmash once again, right? Where
Yeah.
we
Like,
having different patches for all kinds of competitions.
it's super annoying. Like, I feel like they should all be playing the same game at this point. Not sure why they're differed. But whatever, it is what it is, right? So I guess we'll talk about the actual teams. This because there's 6 that have somehow survived, right?
Yes.
In the upper quarterfinals, there's Boston Uprising and Philadelphia Fusion. I guess we'll start with that, right? So
Sure.
Huck has somehow managed to pull the impossible, and like this was because when we remember that this team was like, I think this team was like considered one of the worst going into the league.
Easily, yeah.
Right? Boston
Everybody kind
Uprising.
of had them pretty low.
Yeah, and then he, along with his golden goose, Krusty, were able to bring up this team. And then they went to the top. Then, like a dream, it all disappeared, so to say. But they still have enough. They still got enough to get to this point. And then you have the Fusion, another mishmash of team, but had a much more like upside to them initially. And still a very crazy sort of team. Like if I feel like they have very high skill. See, like I'll put it this way: I feel like the way these two teams are structured are dynamically opposed. But Boston Uprising feels more like a team-oriented, structured type of team. Philadelphia Fusion feels more of a free-for-all individual sort of feel, where they kind of run off of better like natural chemistry and aggression, and trying to make as much room as possible for their god Carpe. So. Is that how this quarterfinals is going to play out, you think, or what?
It's possible. I think this is the first match that I think we're going to see Boston really kind of miss the fact that they don't have a very deep bench, like we mentioned in the kind of pre-show. This is going to be an endurance race more than anything, and the fact that this is a Boston that's kind of slowly kind of came back to us during stage 4 was very visibly not themselves, and you can imagine why that might be. Losing the coach, struggling with the meta, internal conflicts. It could be a slew of different things, or it could be them all piling on top of each other. But I think they're really going to suffer in this case, and again, this is all prefacing the fact that dive could be or could not be kind of vogue or meta again. I think that they're really going to suffer without a strong Widowmaker. If we look at the map pool, we've got Eichenwald, Kings Row, Hanamura, Volskaya Industries, Lijiang, Oasis, and Dorado and Junkertown. All of those very, very strong Widow maps. I think I did the math and kind of gave my own breakdown of point, or however there's almost 12 points throughout this entire map pool that I think Widow is very, very strong at. Out of 21 potential points, I think 12, so that gives us like a 57% like good Widow kind of areas. And the fact that they don't have a player to really kind of flex off to that. Mistakes has been okay, he's been serviceable, but we're kind of coming to the stretch of the Overwatch League. He's going to have to play against Carpe, people like Pine, people like Sabiolbi.
I mean, first you have to get past Carpe first. Like, that's...
Exactly. But it just shows you like the level of talent that he's going to have to play up against, and I don't think he's going to shine as much. And I do agree with the immediate response to that I can hear Reddit already chirping at me. It's more of the tanks giving them the room to do that, and I completely agree. But just from a head-to-head perspective, I just don't think he's just mechanically as gifted as somebody like Pine, or just purely head-to-head. I think that there's a large discrepancy there. And there again, we have to question: is dive going to be good? Because if it is, Boston has a good chance at it. But it's too hard to say. Again, when we look at Boston, they've been historically very an aggressive team, calculated aggression, but it's been very dive centric. They found success when they run dive, and if Oris is kind of coming into vogue with her ult kind of reduced, maps like Dorado and Junkertown kind of rounding out the best of 5. It's going to be difficult for them to kind of crack that defense or even use it on defense, because I think they're just very privy, similar to London Spitfire, to be able to dive and play kind of high tempo compositions. And I don't think they've ever really found a ton of success on things that are a little bit slower. So this team's got a lot of problems to it. They don't even still have a coach. Obviously, we can only assume that Huck is probably acting as coach. And he's probably coming in and manhandling this team up. So it'll be interesting, and we'll see. They've got a lot of problems. Not as much as my English, but you know.
The problem is that Huck now has to see if the Bull Blizzard fucks his support Neko basically.
Well, I mean, Aim God's been playing quite a bit, so
yes, that's actually the good part about all of this, that they have a backup. Imagine what would it be like if Aim God was not in that team.
Yeah,
what happens then? Now you have to put Snow in, or what happens?
I would assume Dead or Avast.
Jesus. So I think those teams are both teams that had an identity crisis in many ways. So some of them are forced by the meta.
Mm-hmm.
And obviously the name that comes to mind here is Striker. But I would even argue that this is also true for EQO.
Yeah.
Right? So Genji is not really being played much at all anymore, because Dive is basically dead. And we've again and again said that the team is very different when he's in. Now, if he has some other picks, I'm just not sure if he is as good on these other picks than he is on Genji, right? He seemed pretty not one-dimensional, but I mean the other picks, he hasn't shined as brightly. He's not a Prophet that has like 5 picks in the top 5 of the Overwatch League. So this is a problem. Then also I would even say there's a self-imposed identity crisis on the Fusion, because it's quite interesting how this Sado and Hotbar thing all worked out, isn't it? So I think, for instance, that Sado is worth the investment of putting Fraggy out, and he looks to be seriously like I find him in potential very comparable to OG, for instance.
Okay.
Now, Hotbar is hot garbage most of the time. He's actually really, really not impressive, way too defensive in many ways. And I understand in a sense. So you have basically that one main tank on the bench for 3 stages, and Hotbar also didn't play much. So these guys could basically, or your idea would be that they develop synergy, and then you bring them in stage 4, and they have the most marvelous synergy on all those picks, and it all works out great. Never happened that way. So what I would like to see from Fusion, unless Hotbar makes some crazy development, is that they come in and actually incorporate Poco, possibly with Sado. And then, yes, you can have Fraggy for some one-off curveball strategies where he plays a very aggressive Reinhardt on certain maps, right? This is definitely also a thing that should be considered. If Dive comes back, I'm even questioning if you can't go back to that heavy Carpe carry style where you're once again playing the sacrificial Fraggy here and there. What's quite interesting is I was looking at their statistics in terms of what targets they res. Now, they used to res main tanks before Fraggy was exchanged. Mostly main tanks. I think 40% of the reses they made were made on the tank line. Now that's obviously not going to be on the D.Va, so we can assume that's all has always been Fraggy for the most part. In stage 4, when Sado came in, and granted, yes, the meta changed, but it has mostly been, I think, also around 40% on support. So Mercy can't res herself, that's on Boombox, right? So that entire strategy completely switched around for them, and they haven't had that peak in playing like that. And it's obviously, yes, a meta issue. There's also things to be said about their way they play around Brigitte. But in general, I wonder if that's these different styles they have. And if we're thinking about Philly, when they really surprised us, it was basically when they were playing that unorthodox style that where players that rely on understanding how Overwatch is played, like London, were completely caught off guard because yeah, like they're getting the first kill, and London's like, oh, let's reposition. They're regrouping. Nope, coming out and at 150 miles an hour and just killing your guys 5v6, and it somehow works out. Unorthodox stuff like that was possible for Fraggy, right? So I'm not sure how this will develop in the playoffs, but this seems to be even more a struggle with themselves rather than against their opponent.
Yeah, here's the way I see it. If they actually, Philadelphia Fusion, right? If they actually think they're a better team than Boston Uprising, they should go with Sato and Hotblow, or Sato and Poco. But if they think they're worse than Boston Uprising, and if they actually somehow get to the semifinals and play NYXL, I think 100% they have to go Fraggy Poco, because that style of play is way more volatile. And you cannot play like a consistent style of play against consistent style of play. You need a high return, high gamble sort of game, and that's how you create the upset, right? And that's why I'd rather actually see them play Fraggy and Poco if they think they are the underdog team.
Like 100%.
Like that's how I see their game plan should unfold.
Not only that, but I think that I completely agree. So let me kind of double back on exactly what I said. And by the way, Reddit and Twitter, I don't think Huck is a cuck. It was just a slip of the lips, and I completely apologize if he ever hears this. So Huck, I love you. Your top 3 control, all that good stuff. It was just me being an idiot. Anyways, so I think this team probably has, Philadelphia Fusion. They probably have more compositions under their belt to pull out. You have to question whether or not Boston is going to be able to keep up with them. In terms of what they can play and what this meta in this map pool allows them to. And I agree that if you are going to kind of evaluate yourself a little bit lower, you probably do want to be a little bit more volatile. You probably want to be a little bit more aggressive and push that tempo. But I don't think they necessarily need to. I think that they've got the deeper bench. They have a very skilled bench that we're kind of just glossing over. Again, do we even see Shadowburn this entire time? He has a diva, could come out, could potentially see some triple DPS on some maps. I don't see it very likely, but again, it's a brand new meta. We're skipping ahead 2 whole patches, so it could be a ton of different things we see. So I wouldn't be surprised if we were to see him. And if we look at like a composition like double snipers, for instance, right?
Yeah.
Who plays the Hanzo? Who plays the Widow? Because Carpe's primarily been the Widowmaker player. Who else on the team has a Hanzo? I can imagine that maybe Shadowbird has something. He's been pretty proficient in other projectile players before. I wouldn't be shocked to see him kind of come out and play the Hanzo. So to kind of give a score, I don't know if you want to do that, Stuchu, but I'm kind of grading this one a 2-1 Philly win. I think they lose early just to consistency issues. I think that's something that Philly's done pretty frequently. You have good Philly, bad Philly. They probably get the bad Philly out of the way early, and they sweep on the second day.
Yeah, I'm with you on the score. Like for Boston, actually, I think their win condition is actually if dive is good. That's like a weird sort of gamble. Like you don't know dive is good until the day of, right? So like that's their problem. Philadelphia Fusion just has most of the cards.
That's a hilarious observation, right?
Right?
It's very possible that people in the semifinals don't know if dive is good legitimately.
Like how would they know?
Can we play this?
It's insane.
Right? It's a tough life. But how would they know? Right? Like they can't know.
Yeah, they can't.
Right. So moving on to the other quarterfinals, we got LA Gladiators and London Spitfire. The great revenge story continues. Fisher has spent his entire season of Overwatch actually just ruining the days of London Spitfire, and has somehow overtaken them by the very end. Right? So London Spitfire, on the other hand, is actually needed somebody like Fisher. In retrospect, they needed like some dude, some dictator, some tyrant, some coach, some bishop maybe, to try to keep control of the team, but they didn't. As far as I can tell, they had some weird internal civil war where somehow the bench players took over the A team for reasons I cannot discern nor logically retroactively figure out, but they've all been kicked, mostly.
the question is if it actually was aggressive and not like, puppy level stuff where it's like, can we play one game, please?
Yeah, maybe it was that.
We're also practicing very hard. And the guy's like, yeah, day off sounds pretty good. And then it's like 0-2 down. Oh, damn. 2-2. Oh, guess we have to go game 5. We can't win every single game with a top roster. So
yeah, so that's kind of how I think of London Spitfire. One of the weirdest teams, just because they have like the high. I still think you can argue they might have the best man for man team in the league. Like, I think it's arguable, but they certainly don't have like the results necessarily that roster should have, and it just comes down to leadership. And Gladiators lack that leadership, but they got it from London Spitfire. So I guess the karma has come to bite them back, right? So what do you think of this one, right? Like, I think this one should be closer, but it really depends on if you actually think London fixed their issues.
I gotta say, I don't think they have. Again, when we look at the theme of this whole event so far, playoffs is their kind of own tournament. It's their own event. It is going to be an endurance race. And if, God forbid, Birdwing's wrist acts up, who comes in? If he gets burnt and, they kind of lose mentality, what happens next? Do they have a substitute to come in?
Mm-hmm.
No, because they all got fired or removed or inactive, whatever. It's going to be rough, and I don't think they had a great stage 4. It looked better in some cases. They had their mechanical performances, but I don't see this being close at all. I actually think that Gladiators is just better at all points. They have more compositions. The map pool kind of favors that. The meta's different. I don't see... while I do think that London does have the best like pound for pound, man to man, just an amazing roster of just complete talent, I just don't know that they've had the time to be able to fix. Unfortunately, I don't think they do. Their coordination, at least in stage 4, we've had a break in between then. Is that enough time to kind of rebuild from the ground zero and kind of learn other compositions and figure out how to play that? It's possible, but I just don't think it's very likely. And if I'm a betting man, I'd probably place my money all on purple.
I mean, you got to say, if it actually turns out that London wins, I would love nothing more. The way Fisher has been gloating all this season.
That's great.
To just have Zoe interview Gesture, and Gesture's like, give me that microphone. Who's better than Fisher? Just me. You couldn't even fucking upload that on Pornhub because revenge porn is banned.
Yeah, right.
I would explode that moment, right?
Listen, I'm all about the WWE storyline, right? Like, listen, no matter who comes out of this, I'm the winner. Like, whether it's Fisher goes one last final time, or London Spitfire somehow get all their shit together and finally stop Fisher from ruining their day. Either way works for me, right? But London Spitfire is certainly a strange team because, like, they had the answer, right? Like, in stage 1, they had the answer, and then they, like, threw it all away. It's as if they were, like, a rich kid who inherited all that fucking money. And, like, initially it looks like it's starting out well, they're investing well, and then one day they like, spend it all on cocaine, and then they've lost it all. And now they're trying to rebuild. Like, this is straight up, like, what I feel about, like, London Spitfire. Like, they've, like, wasted all their potential, and they've returned to the answer, but it feels like it's far too late. And even when we think about the answer is like archaic. Like that stage 1 London Spitfire cannot play in this current modern day of Overwatch, just because the way the compositions work, you have to be able to like change them mid-match, and they don't do that. At least as far as I've seen.
Stuchu, I'm going to give you some sauce for this podcast because, like, it's
not been saucy enough.
Okay.
Realistically enough, nobody's going to watch this far, but
yeah, sure.
Anyway, you know who could have joined London Spitfire during this transfer window?
Who?
Yeah, boy, Architect was.
Oh shit!
Very close to being signed, according to some sources I had, and they also were, and that wasn't as far along. They could have gotten Krusty.
Jesus Christ! My analogy is perfect. That's spot on. Oh my god, they threw it away on cocaine. They threw it all away. And they gave it to San Francisco. A bunch of what is this? I was wondering for a long time how San Francisco got like those two, and now I know it's London Spitfire just fucking up.
Tell you, man, like NRG has deep pockets. They get the good shit. Like, the good shit. Not that you know, that stuff that you get on the street corner, like the premier stuff, Breaking Bad style, you know.
That good.
Like, luckily, I did not know this, or I would have granted them like much harsher in my report card. I've been like, yeah, you guys get a fucking F. I don't know how you guys gave up Trustee and Architect. Fuck you guys. But like, what? Oh my god, because like both of them are like answers that they need.
Yes,
100%.
like it's actually if you were to theorize a solution, that's the perfect one. Because if you remember, Bertring had a dip. It was absolutely ridiculous. He was legitimately a worse player than Hurek during the time he had his dip. And yes, that is possible that it's the wrist issue, though I've already commented on wrist issues in the Overwatch League, but it's like okay, you could have probably not known, unless you have extensive scrim results with him, that Architect, on top of being an absolutely nuts project player, which he has mostly played in Korea, that he would also be a absolutely ridiculous Widow. You just can't expect that. But if we're thinking about what London was lacking, they were lacking a Genji. Architect is the top 3 Genji in the world, arguably, at least top 5, and they were lacking a great Widowmaker. Architect is that too, right?
Yeah.
Then they're missing a coach with a vision, it seems like.
Yes.
Where for some reason that team that has so much individual talent. Yeah, like you start off, right? Gesture, top 3 tank in the league. Fury, if you talk to players, who's the best diva in the league? Oh, dude, like Fury's everywhere. Fury, at least top 3 off tank in the week. We have Birdring. Birdring is probably the 5th best player on London. It's absolutely ridiculous, the luxury this team has. Profit, possibly the best DPS player in the league. You have Bedosin, probably a top 3 Zenyatta in the league. Nuss, you could even argue that he is a upper middle of the pack Mercy. Where is the problem? It's obviously the synergy between all of them. If someone could align them, and from the 3 coaches we know, we have the NYXL duo that are good coaches. We have Coach Moon. Those people are both in playoffs. Who's not in playoffs? Yeah, boy, Krusty. You could have just get in the blank check. Just get him in and fix your stuff, right? Like, no matter what even if he demands that the rest of the coaching staff is fired. Instantly.
Just do it. Like,
instantly, my dudes.
You know what? You're gonna fire them anyway because they basically failed this season. Like, I don't see how any of this like, actually, I don't necessarily know what they do behind the scenes. Maybe it's just like one of those situations where like they give the players information and the players ignore it. I don't know. I'm not exactly sure, but the fact is, like, from the outside, you can only judge the coaches on the results, and the results tell me each of these players are sick, and the results also tell me you guys are fucking up. So you coach, right? Like, that's the answer. Yep. And Krusty has shown himself to be the answer twice now. So, yes. Like, I think, like, that's fucking crazy. They could have got Krusty, huh? Shit.
That's also, like, you know, people in the comments then come along, yeah, you know, especially in the Kai situation, where it was like, yeah, you know, you don't know what's happening behind and what limitations he has. You know what I do if I'm a top-level Overwatch League coach and I consider myself one of the better ones? I walk. I don't do the shit my owner wants me to do. I explain to the next guy that wants to hire me that the other guy is unreasonable. Please don't do that to me. I know how success is formed. And then I get my... Of course, it's hard because you don't have a long tenure. Kai is one of the coaches that has one of the longer histories. So he definitely has points to argue. I think if that actually always... Yes, there's friendship involved. You don't want to let these guys down. That's also a factor. Maybe in Kaikai's case, it's a little unfair to ask. But at the same time, I expect that to be the case in the future. That when a situation is so unsolvable, then you also have to admit to yourself you're not the guy that is able to fix that. Maybe not just because of your personality, but because how people interact with you and what kind of resources they give you,
Mhm.
and then let the next guy fix it. And maybe he's able to convince the owner to give him a little bit more leeway, or has other skill sets, other approaches, how he sees, especially social interactions, in order to fix that. So if we're saying that maybe there's something we don't know about the London coaches, well, guys, you had long enough. You're three. Even if you're not aligned with each other, just like one of you is head coach. He has to make a decision.
We've had over
Yeah.
like 20 plus, maybe 30 plus games. I forget the exact number without Bishop. So it was like, if you could have made it work, you would have made it work by now,
Yes.
right?
Yep.
So
I mean, keep in mind, Captain Planet had a very good point, is that London is the only team that in the second half of the season had a below 0.5% win rate, right? So they went 9-11, right?
yeah.
Like, talking about ground zero, by the way.
Yeah.
Okay, that's... Yeah.
Well, definitely need to blow up some of those coaches. Metaphorically speaking, of course. Metaphorically speaking. So yeah, I like here's the thing. Like, I agree with all your points. I'm just saying, like, I look at these players, I'm like, how does this like not work? But then I remember the rest of the season, like, oh, that's how it doesn't work. Like, if
Exactly.
like their literal winning condition is if they can somehow make it work, then they win. But if they can't, but even in that weird like situation where they did make it work, I still think they might just get over like it's just like an endurance factor. Like they're gonna have to push like LA Gladiators to limit like 3 times to win. That's my problem, I guess. So I guess it wasn't that close. I guess Fisher is going to get his ultimate revenge, kind of Monte Cristo style.
I think so. I gotta say.
The problem I have with this is that if they actually make it, they are not a team I see beating NYXL. So,
Gladiators?
yes.
Yeah.
I honestly, I don't think anybody.
I don't. Yeah, I'm not sure
right
if
now,
anybody
probably
could
will be
beat
able to.
NYXL, but I guess we may as well go on to that because, like, right above them is NYXL, and this is a funny team because, like, I'll go ahead and spoil it. It doesn't really matter. I rank them as like the opposite of Shanghai Dragons, where like Shanghai Dragons is like I had my letter grading as like A through F, and then Shanghai Dragons is literally O40 because they have like broken the scale so badly. Like, the number itself is the only thing that could represent the amount of failure they have shown and exhibited in the Overwatch League, right?
They get their own.
Yeah, they
grading
get their
scale.
own grading, and then like NYXL is like the opposite of that. They're basically like a bone jaw, so they get the S ranking. Like, you have somehow broken the scale in excellence throughout the entire league. Basically, like, if somehow your worst performance is you make it to the playoffs and get second in the like title match, that's pretty fucking good, right?
I think they legitimately could have had a season if you subtract the stage playoffs in terms of losses, because they obviously lost against 2 teams there. They could have probably had a season with like 4 or 5 losses tops, right?
Yep.
Yeah.
How many losses did they end up having? Like,
Not
I
very
want to
many.
say 6 match-wise. I think they had about 6 match losses
6,
Yeah.
throughout the entirety, including playoffs.
Yeah, so it's like
Possibly.
it's like absolutely insane because that's like I guess I'll put it in context. Like, when I say like a bone draw player, that's basically a player who is ascendant above all others within their time period or their peak, right? And so we're talking about players like Savior, Flash, Faker, these types of players. And generally speaking, in order to get that kind of dominance, your win rate percentage needs to be somewhere between 70 to 80%. And obviously, like you just pointed out, like NYXL's is like close to like 90%. It's like, or maybe even above that. And this is without the fact that they've been sandbagging.
Yep.
Or maybe theoretically not sandbagging. Depends on how you look at it, I guess.
Yeah, I think it could be I think Yiska definitely not pioneered, but was very big on the fact that, you know, they could be sandbagging, and it's very logical that you would sandbag, just because, again, it's a league, it's not a tournament. It's kind of an endurance race in its own right. So it could be a mixture of that. It could be a mixture of the fact that
it's basically shown in your sandbox, right? Like, you don't know if they're sandbagging or not until you get to the playoffs, where it will be opened.
Exactly.
Right.
Showed in us sandbag, yeah.
Yeah. Was it really a sandbag, or was it really just shit all along? We won't know until we get here. But yeah, like I legitimately think this team's already like won the league. I'm not sure what you guys think. I think like this is like a for sure win for NYXL.
So
Yep.
there are 6 teams in the playoffs.
Mm-hmm.
I think they have a 70% win rate, a win chance of winning the playoffs, and that's a ridiculous statement considering there are 5
Other
teams
chances, yes.
Mhm.
Yeah. So yeah, like I guess I'll talk about it a little bit because they're an interesting team in the sense that they've broken everything, and I'll side tangent a bit because basically I was going to talk about this later, but I may as well talk about it now. So
Sure.
there was this article, I forget who it was from, but basically it was like asking a bunch of like writers and Overwatch people to like pick their MVP, right? And then on this MVP list, Volamel knows where I'm going. So basically on this MVP list, like everybody listed everybody except Jodak, and I was like, wait a second, what is this? And then I looked through, it was like, oh, okay, I see what happened. Basically, all of you guys worked independently and thought, what is the best case scenario for the second best player in the league? Whereas I was like, okay, I guess I will take the hipster pick of picking Jodak, right? So basically, here's my argument for Jodak, right? He has basically broken the paradigm of the entire game and meta, and has like basically like shifted all of NYXL to play around him. And so he has like consistently performed at like such an excellent level that nobody's ever seen before. And like the only like comparable player in history, I guess, might be somebody like Miro, in terms of like what they did to their hero, what they did to the game, what they did to like the game knowledge, I guess.
Yeah, probably.
Like I think he's the closest, but even like Miro didn't like reach this level of consistent performance. So it's not necessarily like a great comparable, but it's just like the closest I can think of when I think of this game. All right, so that's why I'm going with him, even though like everybody does have like the legitimate argument, like they gave him a shitload of resources, their team is like decked out like fucking crazy. Like you could actually make like an MVP list of like role by role, and every one of their players would be like at least on the list, like a nominee, right? So on that level, I'm with you. Like, can this guy really be that great if he has like all these all-star teams? But the fact that he like broke the entire game like is what clinches it for me.
Yes.
Oh, 100%. And to kind of add a little bit more context to that, it was very similar, that article that I participated in, it was very similar, that we all kind of acted independently. Like, all right, let's be real. Everybody's probably going to pick Jonak, so let me try to make a case for somebody else.
Mm-hmm.
But yes, I think that easily Jonak probably is the MVP. You could argue that maybe somebody like Libero, somebody like Fissure probably has a very valuable sense in their teams, but I don't think anybody has changed the game as much as Jonak has. He's, like you said, been proven to be incredibly consistent, and he probably deserves it head and shoulders above everybody else.
I think depending on your definition of what you consider the term MVP to mean.
Sure.
Well, if you're talking actually about the player that created the most value, and we actually have some sort of empirical evidence for this, I think it's very hard to beat Fissure there.
Yeah,
right?
like obviously, because like we saw Gladiators without Fissure, and then we saw Gladiators with Fissure. So obviously, like the largest jump a single transaction is made was literally Fissure.
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
So like I think he's like the closest if you're talking about the second candidate. If you're looking at like pure value, right?
Yes. And then the third guy for me would be Carpe, actually.
Yeah, I think Carpe's I think Carpe was like Volamell's pick. Like I think he's like a legitimate pick too.
No, I picked Libero.
Oh, you picked Libero, right? Like,
yes.
You were always a fan of Flex, right? So
yeah.
So yeah, I think Carpe's a pretty legitimate pick. Obviously, my personal pick would have been the Shanghai Dragons manager, just because like it takes a special sort of person to get 040 is all I'm saying. A special sort of MVP. The anti-MVP. Like, literally, if he met Jonak in the street, like, they would collide, and then, like, a nuclear reaction would happen as antimatter and matter met. Right? Or something like that.
Here's a fun one. Who's the least valuable player in the Overwatch League?
Okay, do we count players that literally don't get to play, though?
No, that's weak.
Yeah, okay, that's
somebody who has had playtime.
Somebody who has legitimately had a bunch of playtime. Then.
Yeah, not just 2 games.
And you cannot pick the Shanghai Dragons for obvious reasons.
Oh, really? Ah, damn. Now I'm
Like
thinking.
they're like so you could literally pick anybody from the Shanghai Dragons.
Oh, I got a good one. I got a good one. I think I have the correct answer.
All right, wait, let me think.
Yeah,
I
argue
wasn't-
your case. And
I
let me
wasn't
think.
prepped
I'll pick
for
somebody different.
this hater pick.
Yeah, you pick your pick, and I'll pick something different.
Should I go?
Yeah, go
Yeah,
ahead.
go ahead. I gotta think.
Zabosai.
Ooh,
Sure,
yeah.
sure. I can agree with that.
So basically, okay, we're excluding all the players, especially Shanghai, because I would have definitely gotten with someone like Free Feet or something
Free
like that.
Feel, Sky.
Reggie, Roshan,
Guy,
Sky, Sushu,
Yeah.
Zushu.
or Zushu, sure.
So many bad
Yeah.
players on that team. It's amazing.
Bless him.
No, but Zabosai actually played the entire season, and he never really looked comfortable on Mercy, I suppose.
Mm-hmm.
Which basically also can break your season if Mercy is
Yes.
basically 90% of. Well, maybe it's not even too much of his fault, because Sabosai usually. That's the interesting thing, right? Sabosai is a hard carry in the body of a Mercy player, but also usually created the most value whenever he put that Mercy body on. Right, or not Mercy, but the character that doesn't do much.
Yeah.
So historically, his teams always performed well when he was on Lucio and not on the other picks like Widowmaker or whatever. Right. So, I would have thought that he would have had a better impact on the team, because so I've content coming out to this, but I consider him like the nucleus player. Right.
Okay.
So he's like the we have a term in Germany that roughly translates to emotional leader.
Mm-hmm.
So it's not really the shot caller or whatever.
Yeah,
it's the guy that
like I guess it would be like the captain in a sense, but like the captain's like a loaded term in esports, and like they think it's like the tactical leader, but it's not necessarily the tactical leader. It's generally like you said, the emotional leader, the guy who's like who rallies the troops, like gets their mood going, right?
Yeah. Basically the sergeant, not the officer, or the freakazoid, not the Shongiers.
Yeah.
Basically, right? So, I think that the problem I addressed also in that video is, what if your emotional leader actually doesn't cut it anymore individually? That's a real identity problem and a real struggle to fix socially. And I have this inkling that they try to do this with Zappis, and they stepped in the same landmine with him.
He was not nearly good enough, right?
Yes, probably.
Mm-hmm.
And at least not. I mean, it's hard also to implement such a leader in the middle of the season and whatever. So I think after this season, it would make a lot of sense if Zabosai moved to a coaching position. And stayed with them. I mean, it remains to be seen how much they retain of that team anyway.
Yeah.
Because, I mean, they already have a Saya player. Awesome guy, honestly, has been a pretty underwhelming player for a Korean player. And then if you want to stock up on Koreans, and they already signed Hagopyeon on their contenders roster, it's like probably want to replace the main support as well then. But the problem is then who's the shot caller then? Can, for instance, Tivik do that for them, right? I already speculated that Tivik is a player, yes, he definitely still has solid mechanics, but I can see him also doing a Seagull basically, where he maybe steps onto the flex tank role or the off tank role, and maybe can lead from there in some way. I'm not sure if he can actually strategically call, if he could just, because Tivik is definitely like how I model these nucleus players is basically someone that sits in front of the mouse hole of what's gone wrong with the team. He looks at it, and as soon as the mouse comes out, as soon as nobody talks, as soon as everybody talks, as soon as people are playing auto auto mode,
Autopilot.
Autopilot is exactly. then this emotional leader comes in and goes like, guys, what is going on? Listen to our shot caller, right? Something like this. And I think Tivic's personality lends itself perfectly to that. The thing is that Tivic now has sort of like worked around the team and has really tried to, accommodate everyone. And if he wants to do that, I think it's much better to do that on the flex tank role. Other than that, maybe he needs to really, if he wants to still play hard carry, I think he has to be more selfish and also learn more relevant heroes.
Yeah.
Because his hero role has mostly been phased out now.
Yeah, basically, he has two choices, right? The way you've laid it out, Tavik. I know, obviously, it's a side tangent, but basically, Tavik has two choices. He either needs to become more Swedish or needs to become more American. He cannot stay in this weird in-between. And what I mean by that is, like, generally, the Swedish also have this very like strong group mentality. It's why they're so strong in team games, right? And there's actually one team game where they were once the best at, but then they like slowly fell off into disgrace and then into a dumpster. I'm talking about Dota 2, which is like they were once the best team in the world, known as Alliance. They won TI3, and then they did this thing where they decided we are going to stick together forever, and they kind of just ignored the issues. Like, oh, it doesn't matter because we're a family, blah, blah, blah. And then they'd get, like, a decent win once every, like, 9 months, 10 months, something ridiculous like that, right? And then they just ignore it for a long period of time just because they'd be focused. They didn't want to rock the boat. And I think that's, like, the essential problem with Mayhem is they went, like, full Swedish. And they don't have, like... And it's not necessarily a bad thing, but, like, when you look at, like, the successful Swedish teams of, like... We'll have to go like CSGO a few years ago. We have to talk about like Fnatic, right? They were ruthless in a sense, right? They were ruthless in a sense in that they would be willing to, this is like the CS 1.6 version and then the later iterations as well, I guess. It was like they'd be willing to cut out players if they weren't like cutting it anymore, right? And that's not what I see from this Mayhem team. This is more like, this is they were once very good, and their fall from grace reminds me a lot of that Alliance team from Dota 2. And so what I mean by like, he either needs to go more Swedish and like do what Yiska says, like, okay, you have to change your role, but you will still have like a core component within this team as like internal influence. That's very good for the team. Or in my view, he can also go more American and be like, fuck all y'all, I'm gonna fucking carry this game, get on my back. Like that's like those are the only two choices. You can't like stay in this weird like middle ground.
Yeah, I wonder if his personal individual skill is enough for that to carry an Overwatch League level team
like
anymore.
It's weird, right? Because like you want to, you didn't really get very good data from Mayhem, to be honest, as to whether or not he can do that or not. Because this team has like way too many like other factors. Like the only thing I know for sure for Mayhem is Saya player is really good, and Logics can be really good. Like those are the only two reliable points you can get from this team.
Yeah,
pretty much.
And you can't play them at the same time most of the
time. You can't even play them at the same time. But I will give a shout out to Mayhem. Even though we've talked a lot of shit about you, you did good. You got me my 040. So,
yes.
All right.
So you actually beat Dallas every single time. So.
Yeah, that's pretty sick. All right. So back to the original topic: least valuable player. Volamel, you got a pick?
So doubling back to what Yiska had said, it kind of really made me think about main tanks and how valuable they are in the league. So when you look at two of the biggest teams that upgraded their main tanks during midseason, obviously, Fissure with Los Angeles Gladiators, and I would argue that I think San Francisco probably made some very large moves in that same sense. Upgrading Super over Nomi, and it's not to kind of diss them or disrespect them in their character. I think they're probably very nice people, but unfortunately, if I had to pick anybody,
that's like one of the worst ways you can diss players. Like he's a nice person. It's like talking Mayhem. They have nice entrances. Like,
unfortunately,
it's almost like this medieval idea of beautiful people. Like outwardly beautiful people with a beautiful appearance also are beautiful inside, and that is like if someone is ugly outside is also ugly inside. Like this idea is completely. I mean, what we're basically saying is your wrist is a little fucked. You could aim a little bit better. Otherwise, you're intact as a human. Calm down.
All right.
Yeah, but my pick probably would either have to be Nomi or iRemix. I think that they just weren't at the caliber that I think everybody else was at, and outside of Zebosai, I think those would probably be my two, if I'm gonna be completely honest. Yeah,
because but if you think about iRemix, he was so bad that LA Gladiators went to buy Fisher. So technically, in a way, he might be the actual MVP of Gladiators because he was so bad. They're like, we have to get this guy or we're screwed. Depends how you look at it, I suppose. Because that's actually how I was thinking of this least valuable pick. So I have two potential choices. First one is actually a guy who hasn't even played in the Overwatch League, but has somehow impacted it in a very special way. Can you guess who it is? It's XQC.
Sure.
I mean, he has played a little bit.
He played a little. Like, has a single player brought so much havoc and chaos to an entire team without actually playing that much? Like, I can't think of a single. Like, literally, think about this. If XQC did not exist, Dallas Fuel would not be in such a hole because they would have figured out the other problems faster. But because his single problem lasted like 1.5 stages, basically.
Sure.
His own single problem lasted 1.5 stages and exacerbated all the other problems within this one team. I think he may be the least value player we've ever seen, just on that alone. Even though he hasn't played much. Like
I see what you're saying.
Like that's like one of my picks. Like, it's strange because if you're just talking about him in the server, he's like, yeah, he's a fine player. But if you took a look at everything that happened around him during that time, it like broke the team basically and put them in a hole they could never really climb out of until like stage 4. My other pick was actually Wakid, but that's mostly just out of spite because he kept playing in games where I thought Fleta should be playing in.
Sure.
Let me go through what are some reasonable mentions here? Like, Swoosh?
Swoosh, yeah.
I don't know.
I mean,
I think you could argue, but I think it's nice when you look at the other main tanks and you see the drastic differences that Super and Fissure have created, and it really kind of not accentuates how different they added or what kind of different tool sets they added to the team, whether it be leadership, whether it just be pure mechanical skill, whether it be like man management, like you were mentioning. They definitely just impacted them, and it's a complete night and day difference when you look at San Francisco stage 1. And I think San Francisco is probably a little bit of a weaker comparison because they had numerous other things pop up, players becoming of age and being able to play. But I think Swoosh is probably another one that you could mention. And it's one of those roles that you could definitely upgrade.
It's kind of crazy if you think about it. Like, if we included Shanghai Dragons is over like 70% of the least valuable players or something.
Unfortunately, yeah.
I mean, one other name, and he didn't also play that much, but it's kind of interesting that we don't even think about this guy anymore, and yes, his team didn't make it easy for him, but Clockwork, right?
Oh, yeah. He existed once.
He did.
Clock worked up that tracer slot, and okay, he shares half the load because the other one is obviously someone called, after the Japanese saying of "this is troublesome," so Mendo just hogging that spot. So I mean, and then you bring in Ahad, like
they do love wasting slots on people that don't really do much.
Yes,
that is a true case. Like, I always forget those 3 players actually exist in the league because I don't actually see them. Like, it just like blanks out of my mind. But I guess that's how they actually are in Outlaws. Like they're just collecting a check every day.
I mean, Outlaws does have a lot of players that like just never see playtime. But I mean, like, look at LA Valiant. They've got a whole B team that like played once against Shanghai and got blown out. Look at Boston. They've got like they've got some of the, well, I wouldn't say the best, but like a pool of support players that they can choose from. And what are you gonna do with 8 support players? Not to say that they have 8, but they've got way too many that just never see playtime.
Yeah. I do have to give a shout out to Outlaws because unlike their name, they seem to be very charitable. And
sure.
The thing is, you need some redundancy if you know that some of your players have sold some accounts, so you never know who gets caught.
You never know.
True.
Never know what's gonna happen in the wild Overwatch League, right? Back to the original topic because we strayed off a little bit. The other team, the last team we didn't speak about, what in the playoffs is LA Valiant, and this is the team that did win Stage 4. And despite being good, is probably one of the more boring teams in the league. Right? Like, I'm not exactly sure how you guys feel about it. It's like, it just doesn't feel like they have like super crazy players or necessarily like, super crazy like tactics or strategy. They're just like fundamentally very good. And you know what? Being fundamentally very good makes them the second best team in the league, basically.
Yep.
Right?
I wouldn't say that they're not. They're
cookie cutter.
They're not flashy. Yeah, they're very cookie cutter in the sense that they are just that fundamentals team that, you know, they're the Ryu of this game if you kind of get that.
Like they are basically like Plato's Overwatch team.
Sure.
Like it's like the original.
But you're never gonna get a bad game from them.
You're not gonna get a bad game, but you're not gonna get a game that's gonna like, pump you up.
Sure.
Right?
Yeah, but basically, I was actually quite pleased, and Valiant waited till the least or the last possible game to demonstrate this. I'm actually quite happy that they were able to demonstrate a peak, basically, right?
Yeah.
Because that is like the ability to peak is very important in playoffs.
Yeah.
Right, and I don't know, like that win against NYXL. Okay, so the regular season, which they by the way didn't win the stage, as Gladiators did. People tend to forget that because they took it over in the last possible game. But just having displayed that ability to peak now leads me to believe that if they have that ability to have very explosive DPS players in both Soon and Agilities who have, you know, shown that they can explode in a series and make it like really impressive.
And they do gain if somehow Dive is alive, like with Bunny. If somehow Dive, we don't know yet. Bunny is also in Schrodinger's sandbag, supposedly. Yeah.
So this basically puts them at, like, if they are now playing NYXL in the playoffs, it puts them probably at a 70-30, when before it was like a 15-85 for me. So that's already pretty good, that you have the ability to have the extra percentage that you can drag out of your players. And then let's not forget, we already talked about the format, but maybe if your fundamentals are great, in a volatile situation, that actually might come to your help hardcore, right?
Yeah, like I'll give an example. Basically, like StarCraft 2, there was a player like, basically StarCraft 2 is split into 2 types of tournaments. There's the large prep tournaments, basically GSL or Apex basically style, where you have a bunch of time to prep for your next opponent and then you play them. And then the other style is the marathon weekenders, which you saw 1 or 2 in Overwatch, but they never really like this. It was before pre-Overwatch League, so many people don't remember that they actually existed once, right? And there were a bunch of these types of lands, and the actual best player at these lands was a guy named Tasia, and Tasia was fundamentally probably the best player in StarCraft 2 history, just in terms of how he saw the game, how he positioned in the game, how he could read the different states of the game, right? Because like he was legitimately like there's some chess master's quote was like, I don't read 100 moves ahead, I only read the 1 move ahead, the right move, right? That's kind of how Tasia was. And that's kind of how like Valiant is in a sense, or like they don't make like a crazy impossible 100% read like for instance, like they would never do like the Fisher thing where like Fisher after like a Houston Outlaws game is like, yeah, I went on Inven and I told everybody I made that crazy comp change at the very end that won us a fucking game. I wanted you all to know, like Valiant's gonna do that. They're gonna run the percentages. They're gonna figure out what is the most optimal move, and they're gonna do it. And that's a credit to, I think, Moon. I actually think like Moon is a candidate for best coach. It's either him, Krusty, or Wizard, right? It depends on how you think about it, but certainly what we know of Valiant was like when he went into that team, it was like broken apart, and he like fixed it, and he taught them basically the fundamentals, so to say.
Yeah, one thing that dilutes that a little bit is that he came at the same time, basically with Custa. If I'm
like that definitely helps. Like, and I will give a shout out to LA Valiant somehow getting Custa from Dallas Fuel. Like that's like that.
The miracle trade.
That was like a ridiculous trade. I don't know how they pulled that one off. I guess
at the same time, it worked out for Dallas too in the end.
They didn't know it was going to work out. At the time, nobody would have said that was a great trade, but it did work out for them in the end. So I guess we haven't said it, but we've basically implied it. Valiant to second place. Like they're going to beat whoever meets them in the semifinals.
I would assume it's probably Philly.
Yeah.
Obviously, I don't think we got Yiska. Who do you think is going to win Boston Philly? Let's start.
Yeah, Philly.
Yeah, Philly.
So it's gonna be Philly Valiant. I want to say Valiant, but I could also see a world where this roster does kind of get fatigued quite a bit. You know, having to play a best of 5 is something that they haven't had to do yet. And
but I mean, Fusion's not gonna
swap players.
Fusion's gonna do it twice. Like
That's true, but they also have a bench to rely on.
That's
you know, you could bring in Shadowburn to kind of give leeway for Carpe on a couple maps.
Mm-hmm.
You could bring in
Joe Meister.
I don't think that you could see the Joe Meister come out. I mean, they didn't pull a London and just axe him. You know, he's still on that team, so they could. You know, for London's sake, let's hypothetically say that London didn't make the moves that they did. Now you're kind of like, okay, well, you could see Hureg and Hago coming off of inactivity. Maybe they had like a nice break in Korea. They went home, had a little vacation, come back. You have fresh eyes for the playoffs, and you should be able to be a great substitute, or at least be a serviceable one to kind of give your team, you know, a fighting chance.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas Valiant, they've made very good habits of playing very, very standard, nothing too crazy, nothing volatile. So they're kind of B average game is still going to be very, very good, but I just don't know if that fatigue factor is going to limit them.
It's not,
you know what I mean?
It's not like their subs like are legitimately players you could put in though. So like that's the difference, I guess.
That's the worry, is that like Philly does have subs where Valiant doesn't. So if the fatigue is going to wear down on them quite a lot, then I could see Valiant maybe slipping up and dropping a game. But overall, I would say that Valiant probably takes it 2-1 probably.
Yeah. And then obviously, I think we all agree. We're all in agreement. NYXL or Valiant, right? Like they're at least favored.
Definitely.
Mm-hmm. So
I don't see not that I don't see a world that LA Gladiators can't pull off some sort of crazy upset, but I think the meta overall just kind of plays right into NYXL's hands, where they're kind of they're what the London Spitfires should have been if you really look at what they kind of are known to be. They're just pound for pound some of the best in all regards of Overwatch. Mm-hmm. You've got great tanks, you've got great supports, you've got great coaching staff, you have incredible DPS players.
I mean,
like
basically they don't need Flower. That's how disgusting this team is.
It's bonkers. And then, you know, people tend to forget, and people who aren't familiar with Apex, they don't know that Libero is probably the best Hanzo player in the world. Bar none. He's the only person, even in the Overwatch League, to have a strategy crafted around him to play Hanzo.
Yeah.
And even before that, he was playing it and popping off.
Yeah, like no patch seems to phase NYXL. They always have an answer.
Not at all. It's bonkers.
It's a very well constructed team, but of course, like we didn't know. Here's the thing, like when people were rating this team, like they were giving it like maybe top 3 at best before the Overwatch League, but like it's because nobody knew what the fuck Jonak was about.
Yeah, no, exactly.
Like-
It was just like some random dude with LW Blue,
Like,
who was, you know, a
Like,
pretty good team.
I think that's like the weird. I think that's like one of the, like the most underrated things about Jonak, because like nobody,
Yeah.
everybody else in Overwatch League, like they don't seem to understand like the chances of getting a random high MMR dude on ladder and then him turning out to be the greatest player of all time is not high. It's not high.
It's just a complete gamble.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it pains me because I remember I had to refute this episode with Sideshow.
But
where I
it's
was
logical, though.
Like, how are you
Yeah.
supposed to expect Jonak to be that
Yeah.
good? You can't.
You watch him on stream. Like, okay, cool. You watched him on stream once. I've watched Seagull pop off plenty of times, and that's not to say Seagull's bad, but just because you watch somebody play solo queue and do it well doesn't mean that they're going to be able to fit within a team very well. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
they're just not. They don't add up. And
No.
you know, we didn't know what Jonak was capable of. So it was, you know, Jonak plus LW Blue. All right, pretty good team, even if they don't ever play Jonak. And lo and behold, he becomes a staple of the league and probably the best player that we've seen in Overwatch yet. Yeah, who would have ever guessed? You could say that about Fleta, but I think we could have had a pretty good idea.
We knew
Nobody
Fleta
had
was,
any
we knew
idea
Fleta was
about Jonak.
legit. Like, if you can carry,
Sure.
if you can carry 5 dead bodies, you're pretty legit.
Yeah.
I would agree with that, but I think that there is some credence that some people would argue that, you know, you couldn't have known. I
Yeah.
think you really couldn't have known that Jonak was going to be this good. Nobody knew.
Yeah, like he's like an exceptional like exception, I guess. So
Yeah.
like that's why I feel like he's like super underrated, because like everybody thinks, oh yeah, like a bunch of Koreans. Like no, like this is like once in a generation type of player. Like I said, the only comparable is Miro. Miro was not this good.
Yeah.
Right. So now that that's settled, there is one last thing I want to ask. It's a pretty large topic, basically. Go team by team, and you're gonna tell me who you want to kick or who you need to add on to like fix this fucking team.
All 12?
Yeah, it'll be
shit.
it'll be pretty simple. We'll start with the worst of the worst, and I think this one, Shanghai Dragons.
I only get one?
What? What do you mean you only get one?
I only get one person removed?
No, you if you're the GM, who do you remove basically? Like you. No, listen, we all know Shanghai Dragons literally needs to kick all 12 players.
Pretty much.
Without a doubt, they need to kick all 12 players, because literally, like, you have psychologically scarred these players to the point where they will never perform for your team. Like you have literally taught these players how to choke under pressure. It's absolutely amazing. And I was the pilot of that fucking 040 train right from the start, so I understand these players cannot play under this banner ever again. Like, it cannot be done.
Like cattle that gets brand marked, you know, like 140.
Yeah, like they literally need to escape this place. Like just pure psychologically speaking, like it doesn't matter which team they go to. Even if they go to like, man, I'm like, oh my god, at least I'm not part of this Dragons anymore. Like this team, none of these players will ever perform well for the Dragons. I swear to God.
What if they were like the Shanghai Turtles and then they changed their colors? What is that like change the psychological nature? Could you keep like Otto and Dia at least?
No, man, because all right, here's the famous quote. I'm not sure you've heard of. It's from Swindles, who was a Dota 2 player who never had that much success, but he had some peaks and valleys, and he played in the International, the biggest tournament in Dota 2, right? So basically, he said this because he had a pretty good team, but then he kicked 2 of the players, and somebody asked him, "Why did you kick them?" He said, "You don't understand, man. Going to Dota 2, the International, and failing there, it's fucking traumatic. And you cannot look into the face of the player you've been there with and not remember the intense trauma that happened at that moment. This is literally why the Shanghai Dragons have to split up. Because even if you get 2 of them together, like they will look at each other, they will remember 040. That's literally what will go in their minds. That's literally what's going in everybody's minds when they see any of these players is 040. They've been branded forever. And so they need to split up. Like I don't even care if you're telling me like, oh yeah, Fearless is good. Like Adu, maybe he can do something. Maybe Dia can do something. Maybe they can, but it's not on this team. All 12 need to go.
Yeah, you make some valuable points. You know, yeah, it would be
basically
it'd be
a Saya
keen
player
of
and
them to
Logic's killed
remove
them all. Basically.
Yeah. I mean, I think Dia could move to, if there is going to be a Chinese expansion team, he can move easily to there and find.
Actually, I think Shanghai Dragons is screwed if there's another Chinese team. Because every good Chinese player is going to go to that team. They're not going to go to this one.
Yeah, nobody wants to play for Shanghai, and I think you could get like an okay team next season if they do end up removing all 12 players. You could get like a serviceable. I don't think we're ever going to see another Shanghai Dragons team. At least, I hope we don't. I mean, I guess it's potentially like way off in like season 4 or 5 when we expand to 28 teams.
No, man, it's pretty hard to go 040. It's like an impossible feat. It's as impossible as Jonak going from the ladder to the best. Like, it's like basically the 3 of us plus 3 other randoms could have gotten the 040. Like that's how impossible this is. Like,
the thing is, like, imagine a scenario where not a second Chinese team comes in, right?
Sure.
So all the Chinese audience is focused. Imagine the world where they just say, well, our main tank is being voted as MVP of the league. We're selling T-shirts. We can't even print them as quickly. We have these factories. We're really like pushing human rights here, but like we can't even like put the money into our bank accounts as quickly as it's coming in. Let's change nothing. Successful season. Cha-ching. Yeah. Like, imagine that scenario. That's when I lose all interest in Overwatch League. Like, it's over. I'm watching only Contenders Korea at that point. If that's actually a legitimate thing, where it's like, even if they just say, okay, let's keep Gregory, let's keep Fearless.
You cannot keep the 2 of them straight up, but yes.
And just go like, yeah, and we will build that, and we also will start wearing Mexican wrestler masks because this shit is WWE now. Like, it's over. Yeah. Like, at that point.
Oh my god.
The cynical part of me is like, if I actually ran Shanghai Dragons, I'd probably give all these guys minimums, just because I know they will never get a better offer anyway, and I'd still get all that money. Like, that's the cynical part of me, but. God, this team needs to blow up. This team needs to blow up so badly. On every level, too. Like, it's not just this team. It's like their sports staff, their coach, their general manager. Like, the entire thing needs to blow up. Like, they are, like... If there has ever been a team to show you why franchising is awful, it's probably this team. Right? Like,
and I don't even know why I would love for postseason for Blizzard to actually do like an internal audit of what actually went wrong with this team, because this is actually unacceptable from a league perspective and a managerial perspective. It does nothing for the team, it does nothing for the league when you have somebody who goes 0-40. Well, yeah, it gives you PR, but it's horrible PR.
I'm not necessarily it's horrible PR just because of the way Americans think.
Sure,
like, but you see all those people cheering Shanghai Dragons day in, day out. Like, I don't necessarily know if it's horrible PR, but it's like, if you're like serious about trying to find the best, like, this is like a disgrace, basically, right?
100%. A great example came from the recent esports salon when they were doing like the argument between the franchising and just an open league. Yeah, and I think it was Noah who brought up the fact that, are we an entertainment company, or are we a team that's here to win? And that's something that the league is going to have to struggle to identify, and it's going to have to kind of come to a conclusion sooner or later. Are we going to put on just an entertainment series, or are we going to compete?
Well, they're gonna have to come up with it right now, because Shanghai Dragons are super popular and super shit.
100%.
I'm just telling you, I currently live in a country that just got out of the World Cup. Everyone takes this serious as hell. It's like the Pope died in Italy right now. You don't get that by being entertaining. You get that by being competitive. If you actually want to reach the most people and also have them invest in a sense, right? Because a person that actually believes that this means something more than just making them smile every once in a while, but it's like meaning given, right? In Germany, there are football clubs where you can get buried on the, like, next to the stadium, whatever. That it's basically has a religious idea behind it almost, right?
Yeah.
If you want that, you have to make it not a joke. You can't achieve that with entertainment. You have to go through the meaning and the seriousness of the competition. If the World Cup was WWE, it would never be this big.
No.
It is about the genuine competition between nations, and the players cry when they lose, and it's all very serious.
Yeah.
Like from a obviously utilitarian point of view, it's like, I'm not going to starve. I'm not going to, this is not going to threaten my life that Germany exited the World Cup, right?
Mm-hmm.
But at the same time, like in the faces of the people running around outside right now, it might as well does.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Even in Overwatch right now, like if you look at a team like GC Busan Wave, who was previously a team called Fat Cat, who just kind of came up through contenders trials, and this is basically, they kind of floated around in the amateur scene for a long time. They really didn't have any success whatsoever, and now they finally made it. And to see their faces once they won was wholesome. It kind of put a smile even on the most cynical face, right? You couldn't help but look at those kids and be like, hey, you know what, I'm happy for you guys because you actually made it. And this is probably one of your last chances to be able to do so, because again, the tier 2 scene isn't doing so hot, especially in Korea. So you don't get that in an entertainment point of view. You don't get that with the WWE. Like, it's all kind of manufactured at that point, and you can tell it's manufactured.
And I did write in like multiple articles about Shanghai Dragons because I'm the true hater of Shanghai Dragons in a sense, the truest of all the haters. Basically, I said they don't deserve fucking anything in a sense, but in a much nicer way. I literally said that, but everyone was like, "Oh, that was such a nice sentiment." Like, yes, it was. But basically, like I didn't harp on this point very much, but like, if I was like a tier 2 team or if I was like tier 2 player, I would be so pissed anytime I saw somebody cheering with Shanghai Dragons. Was like, they are so fucking shit, and they're taking up a slot in the league. They're like wasting 12 players' times. Like even if it's not me, like what if it's like there's 12 random Chinese players that are like super good, and why aren't they in this team? Or 12 Koreans or whatever, and it's like if I was one of them, I'd be super pissed. Basically, I'd be tilted off the face of the earth like wins every day. Basically.
You could get any contenders team. Give me Fusion University. Give me X6. Give me Hurricane. Put them in, and they'll at least put up a fight against some of these teams. That's not to say Shanghai didn't, but you never won a game. And there's even questions of, how this team was made. There's problems internally, without a doubt, especially early on in the season.
I mean,
what's going to come of this? This sets a precedent.
Shout out to the manager who thought it was a smart idea to get Koreans and then have them speak Chinese. And shout out to those guys.
I mean, you gotta try. I mean, it's a gamble at that point just to try to save the season. So I mean, I can't hate on it.
No, man. I think I wrote this. Like, there's only 2 legitimate gambles: all Chinese, all new players, or all Korean.
All Korean.
They actually did like this weird like 50-50 move, which I hate. So
yeah.
So yeah, moving on to basically, I'll say this for last bit of Shanghai Dragons. Their failure is so immense and so incredible that it has eclipsed the failure of every single other team in the Overwatch League. Like,
yeah, easily. They completely draw the spotlight away from anything that Seoul could have achieved. They draw the spotlight away from what Dallas was kind of burning in the dumpster for a season.
Mayhem as
they,
well.
They take who are the Mayhem? All I see is Shanghai.
Yeah.
The Mayhem. I love the analogy that Thorn used. That it's like Mayhem need to like keep Shanghai on a pedestal and pray to them like a deity of spotlight grabbing attention people, because they've saved them from utter scrutiny.
Yeah.
I guess we'll go to the next team. That's complete shit. Unless Yiska has like some answer for Shanghai Dragons, I don't see.
No.
Yeah, basically, Mayhem is in actually a very similar spot, but instead of kicking everybody, I'll kick almost everybody, and keep Saya player. Like, I was thinking of keeping Logix, but my problem is like you can't play them both at the same time.
Yeah, exactly.
So unless you want to keep him as a sub, which I'm not sure he'd necessarily be up for, I'd say you just keep Saya player, build around him. What's your answer to this? Mayhem squad.
I love how ruthless you are. You're just like
Kick everybody.
Lord Stitchu, may I have the dirt under your fingernail? No, peasant. Spit him in the face.
Listen, you got 40 games. You have 40 games to convince me.
Wipe it off.
All of you need to get out. You guys had 40 games.
It's great.
I mean, what's stopping them at that point, right? You move everybody from Saya player, right?
Yeah.
What's stopping them from picking up the Shanghai Koreans? And if you know, the not the rumors, but if they're going to continue using who was it? X6 coaches? I don't remember.
Yeah,
they imported like some Korean coaches.
Yeah. No.
And you know what's stopping them? If you're gonna blow up the whole Shanghai Dragons, right? You're just gonna have some fairly talented Korean players in the market. Build Florida Mayhem, oddly enough, as a full Korean team. You've got, you know, if that again drives me back to the entertainment or competition point. What are you here to do? Do you want to compete and do well, or do you want to be marketable?
Like, here's the problem with Mayhem, I guess, is they don't necessarily have good scouting, and I think like scouting is going to be. I'll probably put it at like it's going to be a very important role basically in Overwatch League specifically, like, but they don't have good scouting, and like here's my problem with getting Shanghai Dragons players is like you have to put them through therapy. Like, that's my problem basically. Like, I'm not joking. I legitimately think they've all been psychologically scarred forever, and on top of that, like, they have like really bad dyssynergy. Like, you can't get Kaguri and Fearless together. I think like they do not work. That's my opinion. Like, I just don't see them working. Maybe they can work better with other partners. They cannot work with each other. So.
All right, fine. Just give me Otto.
But
that's
like,
all I want.
Like,
just give me Otto.
Yeah, go ahead.
Ado Saya player? Yes, please.
Nice.
Yes,
That's
sir.
nice, isn't it?
Yeah, like Otto Saya player sounds like a good sounds like a good place to start, right?
Definitely.
And like, here's the thing: like, you don't need all stars in all lineups. You actually only need like one or two great players, and then like solid players on the rest. That's how I think you get like a good team, right? A competitive team. So you already have one of the pieces you need. You just get one more great piece, and then you build a solid team around that, and then you go from there. Like, I think that's what Mayhem need to do. And so my answer is kick everybody except Saya player.
I like it. I don't hate it.
Right.
Yep.
For me, if you need to be hybrid, I think you at least need to replace the backline.
For sure.
Mm-hmm.
At least.
I mean, we don't know what the meta will be like in the next couple of seasons, but this one was definitely a season of more towards the early season, like stage 1, stage 2, stage 3. It was a season of flex supports, right? And mostly Zenyatta's, right?
Yeah.
So. Yeah, the thing is, Zupe didn't cut it there as well. Like, it's very hard to say that he was even an average player in the Overwatch League on his position. So I think you have to get rid of that backline. I actually quite liked the idea that you had once, right? Where you said, well, why not approach Gladiators and try to get their backline to stay Scandinavian, right? Mm-hmm. And then... I mean, there are some other players in contenders where you can stock up with. I would have actually liked much more. I'm not sure if there's some personality clash or whatever. Like, Hafikul is a much better player than Zappos, I think.
Yeah.
And I don't know what his personality is like, but maybe you could slot him in there and then make a hybrid team work, because some of them do work, right? Mm-hmm. Valiant works. Philly sometimes works. Boston sometimes
works. Look at 1-2-3 back in the day. That was a whole entire team of a ton of different European countries, and that they managed that to work. So I wouldn't see why it wouldn't.
Yeah, like if you're going to go the hybrid route, which is actually I think fine. Obviously, I think in this scenario you're still keeping Saya player, right? So like that's
definitely
like
I think he's your golden child. If you're going to do anything, you've done one thing good. Don't screw that.
Like in this hypothetical scenario, you probably do keep Zebasai, but not as a player, as like a coach.
Sure.
And then maybe you keep one of the maybe that's enough where like you can keep some of the rest. Like we're talking about like Tank and Tavik, maybe. Mm-hmm. And then maybe you can go from there if you're like really want to build if you really want to build around this like this Scandinavian sort of mix. And I do like the idea just because if you like, it's kind of weird because they're technically the Florida Mayhem and not like the Norwegian Mayhem or whatever.
Sure.
But like if you do build like a core like that, then that means that any good talent that comes from that region will want to join your team.
Mm-hmm.
And that's like a legitimately good way to build your team because like it's not like you're fighting over a bunch of Koreans all day every day.
Problem I see is that it will be hard for them to hold Sire player though.
Yeah, like Sire players gotta be like on top of a bunch of people's list right now.
I mean, that's in a sense, if you just think about the scenarios that must have happened in order for Sire player to end up in Florida, is nuts, right? So we know that Florida is not a top payer.
Mm-hmm.
We know their infrastructure is not great, and we know they're not winning a lot of games. So for a talent like him to end up on that team, a bunch of teams must have slept on him.
Yeah, which is like really weird to me because I thought he was like legitimately good before Overwatch League started.
He was, and that doesn't make any sense to me. And no shameless plugs here. That's just an actual example, right? We had our Owl Pellets kind of like mock tournament where we made our own Overwatch League teams of players who weren't in the Overwatch League. I believe everybody but one. I think there was only one person who could kind of went with like an all Western roster, didn't have him at least considered.
I didn't because of Miraculous Youngsters.
Sure,
yeah.
You went full Chinese,
yeah.
But I think you still considered it.
Yeah,
you still thought about it.
If I went Korean, 100% Sire player.
He's on there. You have to put him on there.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
It blows my mind that nobody. And again, we can't say that nobody never even thought of him.
Yeah.
But nobody hired him, and it went to Florida. Like how?
Like that's like one of the big mysteries of this league is how did Sire player like not go?
It's him and Architect for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, like
it's like these people don't actually listen to what the few Western guys that continuously watch contenders are saying. It's like even Monty was singing his praises.
It's not even just like the few Western guys. Like you have to miss so many people because it's not like analysts don't watch a bunch of Korean VODs. It's not like your coaches don't watch a bunch of Korean VODs. It's not like your players don't watch. Like how many times did you have to miss this like thread? Like that's the mystery to me.
Yeah. To be perfectly fair, though, I knew he was good. I didn't think he was that insane on Widow. Like his aim is nuts.
You see, this is why I actually like the Mayhem because they were like so bad. Like it was actually like a Fleta scenario. I was like, man, they're so bad, but they make Sire player show how good he truly is. Because like you can only show true strength in adversity, and what's more adverse than carrying 5 dead bodies in Overwatch, right?
That's like I've been kind of doing my own little research, and I might actually write something on this of like what is the themes of just like some of the worst teams in Overwatch history, right? So you look at like Shanghai, you look at Flashlux, they've all kind of produced very standout talent. You look at Fleta, you look at Otto Dia, and you look at Sire player.
It's like
and not to say that they produced them, but they still had them on that team, and there's just like a very clear person that does not look like the rest of them or doesn't play like.
It's like a hyperbolic chamber. Like if you're thrown in there, eventually, if you survive the pit, you'll become a changed man.
You become Bane.
Yeah, you become Bane. Right? Like if Sire player, if Sire player was in Mayhem, starting from stage 1, I might have put him as like an MVP candidate.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. We actually have a Refute This episode coming up with Sideshow once he's back. And this episode currently is called Sire Player is in the Alcatraz of roster jails. And I'm pro for that, and Sideshow will somehow try to say that someone else like is in a bigger roster jail, and I don't see it. Like
who
the others that come to mind.
Who else is worse than that?
Fleta is.
You could say Fleta. You could look at Dia or Otto. Sure.
No, man. Dia and Otto, like they've had their moments, but they've also both had their moments where like they kept the team down as well. Like I said, the choke was built into that team, into every single one of those players. Like they built their own prison partly.
Sure.
They tried to break out and then they also built their own prisons. Like, but yeah, definitely think Sire players like had the worst of it. Who else was above that? I guess
in terms of like a good player stuck on like a lower than average team.
May as well just go to Fleta then. Soul Dynasty. So this is a team I think should just be burned to the ground also. Like, you know, it's like my answer is just burn everything to the ground. But in Soul Dynasty, like obviously you keep Fleta, and then at that point you have to make a bunch of hard choices basically. Like a bunch of hard choices. But like I'm definitely kicking out Wakid, and I'm kicking out the coach who keeps putting in Wakid, and. Like maybe it's all three of them. I don't know, but I have to kick out anybody who keeps putting in Wakid or Fleta. It's like, and then you have to make a choice as to which players you want to keep, right? Because like I think Ryu Jae Hong has basically proven he's way too one dimensional. Zumba was okay, I think.
Zumba's probably.
I think I'm willing to keep Zumba, but like you have to find the tank that works with Zumba. Like that's my problem with like the tank and flex tank role is like it's a pair. They cannot like coexist without each other.
Yeah, at least in most metas, yeah.
Yeah, so like you have to find a player that works well with him, and then like you have to kick like a bunch of the rest of these players basically.
Mm-hmm.
That's, by the way, the other refute this that we're going to record is I say Soul should cut everyone but Fleta and Zumba, and I'm pro and Sideshow's con.
Yep. Yiska's of the Suchu belief that you need to burn down these shit teams and then rebuild from the ashes, right?
Yes.
I can't say that I don't subscribe to that faith. You know, I've been quite the hater of Miro. Not to say that I hate him by any means, but it's like he hasn't been good for a while. Like probably needs to go.
Yeah, basically like Soul Dynasty, the same thing with Miro that they did with like Eska and like all those old guys like Lee Tae-jung. Like they're like, you were great once. We will hold on to you forever into your retirement, into your senile age, until we're buried into the ground.
Yeah. If you want to bring up the Alliance comparison, this would be Alliance.
Yeah, this is literally Alliance, actually. Like, this is more Alliance than Mayhem. Because at least
we need to keep the family intact. You know, we have something here. We've got 5 coaches in the background trying to tell us what to do.
Like, literally
5 different ways.
Like, literally what I would do if I was, like, a GM is I just hire a Kespa manager for, like, a week. And then what this guy would do is he would literally cut out all the shit players for me. Actually, wait, I just do that myself. Never mind, I wouldn't need to do that. But yes.
Just pay me instead.
Yeah, just pay me instead. But yeah, basically almost everybody needs to go except like Fleta and Zumba, and then maybe you can keep one of the others if you somehow have like a read, like if you somehow have a read or like you're in like a situation where you can't get better players, maybe you keep one of the 2 of the others.
So who do you keep? Let's ask that question. Who do you keep? You get to keep 1 extra player outside.
You mean I have to keep 1 extra player?
You have to keep 1 player.
Who is the most useful player? See, that's the problem, right? Like, I don't see any of these players as being useful. Like, I definitely don't want Gambler. Definitely don't want Guido. Definitely don't want Miro. Definitely don't want Zephyr. Definitely don't like I'm going down the system. Like, I don't want you. I don't want you. I don't want you. Like,
I'll keep to answer my own question, just to give you time to think, right? I'd probably keep Toby just for the simple fact that he has got at least 1 hero that he can play proficiently. And if you look at the longevity of that they want this kind of game to be around for, there's got to be another time that Lucio comes back around.
But I mean,
and that's not to say
if that's the like reasoning, like maybe I just go with Ryu Jae Hong and hope Anna flips heads.
Yes.
Sure.
Like, I guess that's my third choice. Like if I'm like praying to the meta gods, like Anna comes back, then you want Ryu Jae Hong probably. Like, it doesn't matter how shitty he is. Like, I think he can still play that hero.
Yeah, for sure. And so I've never been a big. Well, okay, I shouldn't say never. I haven't been a big fan of Jae Hong recently.
Mm-hmm.
But you do have to give him credit that he does kind of throw caution to the wind and have this wonton pick rate of just picking whatever the team kind of wants him to cheesily pick, where he's on Winston 1 week and then next week he's on Zarya, and then sometimes he plays Widowmaker. Like, he does have like a very I would say creative, but he has a decently sized hero pool that he can play serviceably. That again, you could kind of flex him into. He's been with the team for a long time. He has a lot of kind of internal clout. If you're going to look at somebody for a captain on Seoul, it probably would be Jaehong. It used to be Yiska. It's probably Jaehong now.
And like,
yeah, he brings a lot of intangibles.
And like, I could slowly transition him into a coach role. Yes, I could.
Sure,
I could
exactly.
totally do that.
I think that's perfectly fine. Yeah, I like that.
Yeah. So I guess if I had to keep one of the others, it would be Ryu Jae-hong. But my actual answer is kick everybody and keep.
Just kick everybody else. Yeah, we only keep 2.
And like, and Zuba's only like, he only gets to stay if I find a tank that works with him. So yes, that's my answer. Guess
Yiska, what do you gotta say? Real quick, I'm actually interested to hear what he says.
All right.
Oh well, you will have to watch the review this episode about this one.
You will have to watch it. Yeah.
All right.
But yes, he is pro Fleta, Zumba, and anti everybody else, just as I am. So that's a. All right. Here's my question then, because obviously you're talking about the roster. Do you kick all the coaches as well?
Probably.
Yeah.
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 I think they all need to go, basically. Like, they've all failed. I don't actually know in what ways they failed, but collectively they've definitely failed. Right.
Yeah.
Yep. Pretty much. Like, you probably could salvage maybe 1 or 2 people, but the fact that, like, if you're going to look at Shanghai the same way you look at Seoul, it's been pretty much an abject failure. You've dumped a ton of money into this. You need to kind of reevaluate and audit your system on what you actually are going to do come season 2. It's a conversation has to be had on whether or not you're just going to remove everybody. I think that's probably one of the better bets.
All right. Next on.
Keep in mind.
All right, go ahead.
If Seoul Dynasty actually stays the only Korean franchise, right?
Sure.
It's not 100%, but we will see, right? But if you are, then season 2, I guess players would also think that it's reasonable to assume that players usually are kept more than 1 season if they perform.
Yeah.
So if I'm a Korean player, I actually probably want to be on Seoul Dynasty. So once season 3 comes around and we go into the cities, that I
live at home,
have at least my HQ, depending on what the format will be like. But you will definitely get to see Korea much more often than a team that is inside the US, right? So you probably, especially knowing how much Koreans like Korea, you probably have a pretty good idea or pretty good way, other than money, to attract top tier talent.
Yeah.
So I don't think you didn't even have to keep these, sort of meh players, because you could probably attract better talent also from other Overwatch League teams, possibly, because you went in with a pretty straight idea, thinking, oh yeah, we have Lunatic High and we finally have a solid DPS on that. That got to own, right? Now you can completely forsake that idea and build from the ground up. And I wouldn't be surprised if, like, for instance, maybe a couple of London players would come to Seoul, or even some of the mercenary players, like from Boston.
What if they got Flower?
Yeah, definitely.
Pretty good choice. Like, here's actually my actual theory of season 3 is the 3 or 4 best teams will be from cities that have Korean food.
Nice.
So as New York, both LA's and Seoul Dynasty so far, like, I think these will be the best teams because they will naturally, like, there's something weird about the Koreans, or like they love Korean food to like the point where like they disdain all other foods basically. So like that's like, it's a legitimate point. Like, I think if you assume Korea will have the best talent, and you can kind of assume that just because of the way their culture works, of how many players have come out of that region in general, then they get the highest roles of new Korean talent, so to say.
How hard is it to get a Korean cook then?
Yeah.
Well, I don't think it's just like the food. It's like they have, like, New York has like a pocket of like Little Koreatown, and I think LA has it as well.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
Where
but I mean,
you can, it's very similar.
but,
well,
but I mean,
don't
you
know, I
have
can't
if
say.
if you're not in one of those cities, you definitely do need like a Korean cook.
Oh, 100%.
Like I'm not joking. Like they would literally like go into like depression without like I've heard like random stories where like Koreans like what they do is like they have suitcases where they go travel to these international lands. They only last like a week, right? And they go to travel international lands, and inside their suitcases like just like all instant noodles because they will not refuse to eat any foreign foods, only that Korean shit. So
I wouldn't doubt it.
yeah,
Completely mental.
yeah. So like that's definitely a factor coming when you're talking about these types of teams, right? So moving on. Actually, I don't know if San Francisco is a Koreatown, but whatever. San Francisco is. It just happens to be here, so I'll talk about it.
Sure.
Right. So basically, I basically said like in terms of trying to win season 1, they failed, but in terms of like what they were trying to do, which is like build a team towards season 2, I think they succeeded in a sense because like they somehow jacked Architect from everybody. They somehow got Krusty from everybody. Super turns out to be pretty good. Snatcher turned out to be pretty good. Moth was a pretty good pickup overall. Like I still think like there's some chaff that needs to be kicked out, like Nomi, for instance. But overall, I think like they're on the right path. Like
Yeah, 100%.
all right. So is there like one or two picks you can think of where like they need to get this player, or they is like there's a position you think that needs to be improved?
I think most people kind of are in agreement that they probably need somebody just to fill in for when Sleepy or Moth aren't having like great days. So having just again, it's just filling out the bench and kind of shedding the weight. You know, are you ever going to play Nomi again? I don't know. It's hard to say.
No
are you
way.
ever going to see IDDQP? Are you ever going to see IDDQD play? Probably not. You probably get rid of him.
I don't know why he exists. Yeah.
He's kind of become the marketing face for this team, but I wouldn't see why you couldn't have Baby or somebody like that do that. So it's
I couldn't see why I could
you know,
just join
shedding
like
a
the team, not the team, but like as a streamer or something like.
sure, exactly, right. So I think it's just, you know, shedding some of the dead weight and bringing on people that you actually are going to intend to use, and using them and flexing them because, you know, again, and I don't want to harp on this. I don't want to kick a dead horse, but a lot of people in the community aren't really taking this into consideration. I don't even know if most of them even realize what the format's going to be because it's so not talked about. This is an endurance race. You need a good bench.
Yeah.
They don't. They have one, but it's also great to fill out the entire bench.
Yeah. Shout out to
and
Mayhem
have
for
just
starting
a
with
position.
6 players. I don't know what they were thinking.
Yeah.
Like
Actually, a mess.
And like one coach
Yeah.
and whatever, yeah.
Yeah, I did hear some weird stories where like none of the teams really understood that they were supposed to pace themselves. Like I heard,
I wouldn't doubt it.
like I heard some stories like they were like practicing like 8 to 10 hours a day, like weeks before Overwatch League started. It's like, you guys have lost it. Like
Yes.
like I feel like I should go down to LA and like just run a class that we call peeking towards the playoffs. What you're actually supposed to do, and I think I'd make a bank, but I don't know if they'd believe me. They'd be like, "No, we have to practice like the Koreans, 8 to 10 hours a day."
Oh yeah,
every day."
exactly.
It's like,
The players would never believe you, but you could probably convince like GMs or coaches.
yeah, man. Like I'm not certain they necessarily understand what's going on, but whatever. Yeah. So I think San Francisco's in a good spot, assuming they keep Krusty,
Sure.
right? Because I feel like
yeah.
Krusty has actually pivoted himself and established a place where he's like one of the most desirable pieces to have in the league,
Either him or Arrow.
right?
If we're looking at just purely the support stuff, yeah.
Yeah, because like
Correct, yeah.
I think Yiska specifically said this, like the thing you need the most right now in Overwatch League is leadership, both inside and
Yes.
outside the game, and you want proven factors, and Krusty is like one of the 3, right, that have proven. Like
Yep.
Arrow is still yet to be proven, but he certainly did something like crazy with Dallas. Like I'll give him that, but
Yeah.
yeah, definitely. I think Krusty's gonna have to get paid a lot. It's gonna be like the gold rush all over again for Krusty.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Unless he signed some contract that would keep him on
Like
shop for a
multi-year
longer.
Yeah.
deal or whatever.
Yeah.
So my
Possible.
idea, or from what I heard, he also likes to be head coach.
Yeah.
Mm.
And head coach, where the definition of head coach actually makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
Mhm.
Not just being paid more, and I don't know, you get the better chair in the
in the room.
in the practice
With
room,
the red
right?
shirt. Yeah.
But where you actually have the final say and tell people how it's done, and there's no general manager that tells you how it should be run or whatever, right? So that is definitely if they can provide that environment, I think Krusty might even stay with Shock.
Yeah, so definitely Dallas will not get Krusty for sure.
Yeah.
just from what we know of Dallas.
No, but I think the interesting question in terms of who do you keep in Shock is actually between Dante and Baby Bay.
Sure.
Yeah, because
that's a hard one. I think I personally would probably go Dante.
Yeah, I think Dante makes more sense, but I could see an argument for Baby Bay. Like I could see a reason for keeping him over Dante. Like, but it's a hard choice because yeah.
It's difficult. I think that Dante's definitely been a little bit more consistent. Granted, he's had a lot more playtime over Baby Bay. Yeah, I think he has like a career in the league. I think he's talented enough to stay within the league, and I think he could pivot to another team. But yeah, I'd probably say that Dante's probably your best fit for the team right now. And he has like I said, a good hero pool. He's already kind of fit in the team. Not to say that Baby Bay hasn't, but yeah, if I had to remove anybody from that kind of DPS pool, it'd probably be Baby Bay.
On a side tangent, I do think like if there are going to be any international lands in this offseason, I think the only Overwatch team that should be, I guess it depends on if they get a new roster or not, but I think among the current Overwatch teams, the only one that should definitely go is Shock. I think they need more experience.
That would be good for. I think it'd be good for most teams, to be fair. Like, I would love it for that tournament, not to perpetuate the tangent, but I would love for that tournament to happen after the season signing blocks. I don't know exactly the date or when that happens, but it would be like a fun little event to see how these teams kind of pair off against each other leading into the season. So yeah, it'd be kind of a nice little treat.
Yeah, if the preseason was actually a competitive thing, not just some show matches.
Do we even know there's going to be another preseason? Do you think there is?
There might be. Like, who knows? Like, I don't know what Blizzard.
We don't know.
I didn't even think of that.
I don't know what Blizzard is thinking, man. Like, I can only predict their mistakes. I can't predict their successes.
Sure, fair.
Yeah. All right. So, I guess this one's pretty easy. Valiant. Don't think they need to change much. I'm not even sure why KSF is on this team though, but that's like I'm not sure why he's here.
With Valiant, I think I get rid of some of the B teamers and try to get someone with oomph on like a hard carry performer.
They lack a true like superstar in this team, right? Like assuming like soon or Agilities doesn't become that, but like we've had 40 games. If they were going to become that, I think they would have by now. So yeah, like it's hard to say because I don't necessarily know like if Noah Winston is the type of person to go get that superstar necessarily. Like he like oscillates between the two, between entertainment and like competition. So it's hard to say. But
I don't even know if I would say it's necessarily entertainment with him. I think it's a lot of the. I don't understand why you need a B team to facilitate growth in the scene or try to like grow your own like homegrown talent, like, so that you just like kind of breed them internally. Like I think why can't you do that in contenders?
I think he lives on the theory like if you have the right infrastructure, if you have like the right coaches, and they certainly do have like one of the best coaches in Moon. Like you should be able to like raise these players to a good enough level. Now, obviously, like I don't know his entire philosophy, but like that's what I got from his like salon thing with Carmack, right? And obviously, like you can do that, but that won't get you an insane talent. Like you can do that with. I'll go ahead and say you can do this with like 30,000 players. You're not gonna get a Jonak out of that.
No. Yeah. The thing I still think is that the 12-player roster has potentially not been proven to be a bad idea, because theoretically, if we're thinking about Overwatch as a game, right?
Mm-hmm.
We don't have these practice tools for the most part, right?
Yeah.
So what you can do to make your practice more effective is run drills. Now you can't run drills with other teams, like
because
if
where
you
the
want to
information, yes.
Yeah, it's not just that, but you can't go to NYXL. Oh, can we for that scrim block, like practice, attacking King's Row A with this comp, but nothing else for 50 tries in a row, and as soon as the first attack is over, we reset. That's not helping NYXL in any way, probably.
Yeah.
Right? So you probably want a B team to exactly, hone these drills, and you also probably don't want your B team to be
the academy team?
Literally worse than Shanghai Dragons.
Yeah. That's true.
So, yeah, I think that if they actually stock up, have a second team, there's also something to be said. I still give some merit to the idea of having like a specialized second team where maybe I can, for instance, if I can focus on assault maps, right? Think of how influential assault maps are in the Overwatch League format. You play them in the decider match, so you play them much more frequently than the other map types. So if I can hone that into specific players to play assault very good and bring not just a Pine in, but the entire team in that plays assault very well. I don't think assault is a good example here because it's mostly like being a good frag.
Yeah, it's like the answer is actually just getting like 5 Pines or whatever. Like,
yeah,
yes. So even if maybe that could work somehow, or as a curveball, like imagine how that would be if Valiant shows up in the playoff finals. They actually had a solid second team, and they just completely field that, and it works. That would be nuts.
Like, actually, this is going to be like one of my theoretical questions at the end, but I'll go ahead and ask it now. Like, so basically, like the way the current rosters are structured, there's an A team, right? And then after that, there's like a bunch of substitutes you can put in, like either because somebody needs to rest, or you have like a specific like map or a specific mode you're going to play in. My theory is actually like you have this A team, and if it happens that you have to sub somebody in, like you just have to wing it at that point. But what you actually do with your 6 other players is you create a B team, but what this B team is supposed to do is it plays a style completely opposite of your A team.
Yes. Bad idea. Yeah.
Right. So like basically like my theoretical answer would be like my A team would be like the super aggressive version of Philadelphia Fusion with like Fraggy and Poco, and then my B team would be like the super defensive Houston Outlaws. And then all of a sudden you have to figure out which one I'm going to throw at you in any way. Is that even like theoretically possible?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah,
I definitely think so. And I think Valiant has the skeleton of it already, where they have specific kind of coaching staff members dedicated to, coaching one team over the other, or spending more time with them, I should say. So if a team was going to do it, I think it would be Valiant. And I don't think it's a terrible idea, but it's just, I think it's difficult for them to be able to then craft 2 teams at the same time, if that makes sense, where it's like, could you, in this hypothetical, right?
Yeah.
Could you take members from the B team and insert them into the kind of starting roster? Is that even possible?
I don't think I think you'd lose out compared to the other teams, but like you would gain so much if you went into a playoffs and you had like this really strong A team and this really strong B team, but they play completely diametrically opposed styles.
Sure, yeah.
Because then the other team all of a sudden have to prepare for 2 styles on every single map.
Yes.
Right. Like that's how I would think about it. But like basically that's like how you would play it in like a StarCraft like team leagues, so to say. Like you would throw out a bunch of like different like sniper style players out there like that, either specifically counter a player or like have a style so weird and so out of place that you cannot practice for him, just pure fundamentals. So
yes,
right,
yeah. All right, so Valiant's pretty good. Gladiators, I think we already went through. You need to kick out iRemix. Like, that's my... For sure, you need to kick out iRemix. Right?
Mm-hmm.
And then...
Yes.
Yeah, and then I'm not sure if you want to kick out... If you want to switch up or upgrade some of the other players. Because I feel like it's a pretty good team, but, like... The problem is, like... You can see some upgrades, so you don't necessarily know if the upgrades are going to improve the team as is.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, it's hard.
Like unless you have like a surefire, like, oh, this guy's fucking awesome, like Saya player, like I don't know if you change somebody.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean they also have some slots left, right? They have 2 more slots to fill. I think that's a more likely scenario that is just going to kick iRemix, then they have 3 slots to fill, and they're like, if they then can stack up like the armory, I think that's actually quite good.
Mm-hmm.
The problem I have a little bit is that Silk Thread and Hydration seemingly play a very comparable style, and Hero Pool as well. And it's like, I guess Silk Thread has other intangibles, is what they're saying, while Hydration, I mean,
he plays,
seen him on Oversight, it's basically like, so
he's a
what
bot,
you see is what you get.
Yeah, like...
Yeah. So, I think, maybe one of them could go to have a little bit more
wiggle room,
diversity in your roster there. But yeah, I wouldn't change because at some point, there's always, like, when you're approaching something, when you're trying to improve a system, the first step always is, let's not make it worse.
Yeah. Right?
That's before we even start improving stuff. And I think there's for instance, if we say, well, we have Void, get Bishu out, right? Bishu probably also commands a pretty high transfer fee, I would think, because of his bilingualness and his ability.
I think it's pretty useful for this team anyway, so it's like, it's hard for me to think of kicking him, right?
Yes.
I was like, obviously, iRemix needs to go.
Yeah, he also seems like a personality that is nice to have around, sort of like almost Mickey-esque in some ways. So, yeah, that you threaten to break the magic sauce that has developed over the season that led you to win the normal games of stage 4. Yeah, right. So
let you win the regular stage. So I was like, I think it's a pretty good team. It's just like my problem and their problem was going to be, how do you push it up to the next level?
Mm-hmm.
And that's like a very hard leap to make.
Yeah, I agree.
All right. So moving on, the dumpster fire. Okay, let's talk about Dallas Fuel. So, where do you begin with Dallas Fuel? I believe you did refute this with Sideshow about whether you want to blow this team up. I didn't actually see it. Which position did you take?
I said don't.
You said don't? Okay.
Yeah.
So,
I upset you, Master.
No. Like here's the thing. Like, I would have said yes at the end of stage 3 for sure. Like, I think you would have said yes, right? Like at the end of stage 3, you would have blown this shit the fuck up. But they actually showed signs of life, and here's my problem. I think you blow this up if you can't keep Arrow. Because I think he's like the catalyst for the other like working pieces. But if you do keep Arrow, then you can start keeping some of these pieces. Like, I think you have to keep Effect. I think you keep Taimu. You keep the 2 French guys. You keep OGE. And then I don't actually know if you keep Mickey.
I agree, except on Mickey and Effect. I honestly think you keep Mickey and you probably just let Effect go. I don't know
you let Effect go.
Yeah.
Because like maybe like personality wise he doesn't work with his team, just because like you've seen them with this team, you've seen him without the team, so I can see that argument, right? Like, yeah,
he's a very talented player, but like in this particular roster, I don't know that if they were ever gonna kind of breach past that peak, in the same sense that if we're gonna argue like how do we improve the LA Gladiators, I think the way that we improve the Dallas Fuel is by kind of trying to make those hard decisions. And yeah, he's a very talented player, and you probably want to build around him, but he hasn't been around for very long. In the sense of just the Overwatch League, right?
Yeah,
like
so,
he's played outside of it, but it just hasn't worked.
All right, so I can see that, but actually, yeah, I can totally see that. Like, he was sick, but like we haven't seen him for a while. He basically broke his back, so to say, and then all of a sudden the team is better without him, right? And I'm trying to think, because there's been like way too many like internal insights into Dallas Fuel from all the breakouts. I'm trying to think if there was one specifically against Effect.
Well,
there might have been
he was
at some point.
Towards the team being negatively, I don't think, but like some of the social media stuff was concerning, where he was like basically showcasing some of his mental problems.
Yeah, like
metaphorical pictures, basically.
Yeah, like I feel like Effect, like his like here's his problem is like he's way too emotional. Like he goes from 0 to 100 instantly.
Yes.
So if you can't if you can solve that issue, I think you keep it.
Oh yeah, then you can keep him.
But like but here's my problem is like Dallas Fuel has never shown they can solve that issue.
No.
So I think they do have. I think you're actually right. I think you do have to let Effect go in that particular case. Right? Because
I think he's crazy talented, and he probably might. He probably will find his way to another roster, but I just don't see him working.
It doesn't really help. It doesn't really help you if you have this guy that's amazing, but you can't use him correctly in the roster. But I think they're gonna keep him. Like just on the fact that like he was about to retire. Like no, please don't retire. So my assumption is they're going to keep him. But I could see why you would remove him at this point, right?
Yeah, the thing is also, and just personally, maybe that's just me, but if I'm a Dallas Fuel player, and it has been going very badly in Stage 3, and we really have issues, right? And Stage 4 looks to be the same, and you're basically struggling to not lose to Shanghai Dragons in your mind, and then this guy goes home for the second time this season and leaves you high and dry. I'm not sure if I can develop a professional,
Yeah, you're not sure if you want to work with this guy, right? Like, is he going to be there when you need him? Dude? Like, I mean, to be fair, he tried to help you like the first two stages, but I can totally understand where you're coming from, right? Like, and thank God Dallas Fuel won that game against Shanghai Dragons, because that was like one of the dangerous moments for me. But
like in a sense, I actually, if I'm a player on that team, I'm actually more upset at him than at XQC, because XQC's problems were always outward. They weren't towards the team, right?
That's true.
He wasn't suspended for slapping a player on the team or something like that, right? He was suspended for outward issues that had nothing to do with the team structure. Yeah. He would be a redeemable personality if he could fix that. Well, at the same time, like, Effect was always pretty clean in terms of how he behaved towards the Overwatch League, but like that just it's not something I would want, because at any given point in the future in the seasons, who tells me that in a tracer meta this guy doesn't abandon us, and what now?
Like, all right, so I see where you guys are coming from. Like, here's the I guess the question is how. All right, I'll explain a metaphor, right? So obviously this is a team game, but like in a 1v1 game, there have been players like this who have been extremely talented, but extremely like crazy in their personality. Like the first guy I can think of is like Naniwa from StarCraft 2. It's like an incredibly talented player, probably one of the best, but like extremely emotional. Basically like pissed everybody off that like worked with him at like various different points, right? But like that's fine in a 1v1 game. But in a team game, basically, there's like a give and take, where like you're allowed to be as toxic as you are skilled. So obviously, the biggest example we can think of is Simple. Like this guy was like crazy bad. He's not bad now, but like in the old days, he was incredibly terrible, to the point where like even like the tier 3 teams want to pick him up in CIS because he was that toxic, so to say, right? And so when you look at Dallas Fuel, you look at Effect. yeah, sure, Effect might be one of the best players in the league, but does he actually pass that test? Like, is having Effect worth that pain, so to speak? And we actually already have the results technically because we have 3 stages with him, 1 stage without him. Probably have to let him go just because I don't see anybody in this team that can like control him.
I don't think so.
And keep in mind that this isn't strictly a Dallas issue because Effect could have also he tried out for Lunatic High, and he wasn't worse than he is now.
Mm-hmm.
So you have to think that something was already up with him that they didn't decide to take it because they definitely had tracer problems.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And then he was also a substitute on another team, right?
Meta.
Mm-hmm.
You remember back?
So why did he not play there, right? So it's a strange situation that I wonder if it takes a very special environment for him to flourish, much like Simple, by the way, where you basically need Teflon skinned teammates or whatever.
Or Simple had to get beat down by the ears though, like.
Sure.
Yeah.
When
maybe that's what it's going to take for Effect. You know,
Effect has to get beaten down. He has to go to Florida Mayhem and carry 5 more dead bodies for like another 2 years before he comes to realize the light.
Yeah.
Maybe
contender season in Korea. Play some trials with the freshly reassembled Fleshlux.
Yeah. Maybe like
let the prophecy continue.
Yeah. Who knows? Yeah. That's actually a weird thing about Fleta. As far as I know, he actually had no problems.
Yeah, he was entirely pretty quiet. That team did have problems, and his name never came up.
Yeah,
he was kind of impervious in that sense, and he just shut up and played the game.
All right, so moving on to the next one, Fusion. Joe Meister needs to go out, obviously.
Coach, yeah, probably. You keep him around. You can put him in the same sense of how what the LA Valiant did with one of their players. Just kind of keep him around if you like him and you think he actually has a good mind for the game. You can keep him around. I think that's perfectly fine.
Hoppa.
Do we actually? By the way, just side tangent real quick. Do we think Grim Reality does anything but entertain Karif? Like,
I don't know what Grim Reality does, man.
I mean, that's a worthwhile job. Like, Karif entertainer. I definitely like that job.
I'd sign that. Yeah.
But I mean, I sort of this speaks to Noah Winston as human, I guess, because keep in mind he pulled out this kid out of high school.
Mm-hmm.
He had him finish high school via online classes, right? Way back in the day on Immortals. Now to not just completely abandon him because this kid currently has troubles in his career, but gives him a little bit of a chance. I could even see them trying to get him back up to speed. Because he had definitely potential, right, back in the day. Like, we were talking about him possibly being the best DPS in the US, and he could have been on the US team last year, right? Mm-hmm. I know Flame would have chosen him. So, I don't know if a kid this young with supposedly so much potential is actually, like, it just currently seems like they had to free up a roster slot.
Yeah.
And now, I mean, I'm sure if someone doesn't feel well, he's also in these scrims.
Mm-hmm.
I would think.
I guess it'll. Well, I guess it'll depend because, like I said, like Noah does believe in like his system and raising out these players. So maybe he's like a prime candidate for that because he is pretty young. Yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, basically, Fusion need to get rid of Joe Meister, and Hoppa is good enough for Shanghai Dragons, but certainly not for Fusion. He needs to go. Anybody else that pops out to you is like this guy needs to get Netfly, yeah.
You gotta wonder what they're gonna do with this DPS line. I don't know that a four-man DPS line is really gonna work.
This one doesn't work though, like this DPS line, right?
Yeah. I mean, you don't ever really normally see Shadowburn. You see him on the occasional Blue Moon. Yeah. I think again, he's one of those players that could just need another team. You
get him to Gladiators.
Exactly, yeah. Ship him out to another team and let him do good work there. But on this team, just kind of rotting away and kind of atrophying, if you want to call it that. He hasn't seen competition in a long time.
Well, I'm sure Fusion's not actually going to give Shadowburn to gladiators if they actually have a power in that negotiation. It's like just making gladiators stronger than them, and like they don't gain much from it. But yeah, I can see basically Shadowburn needs to go, but not because he's bad. It's just like he's extraneous. He's not he's not like impacting this team positively.
Yeah, it's like a Fissure situation basically.
Yeah.
Yep.
Right.
I guess in that sense, it does make sense to have him shipped to gladiators. The Shadowburn Fissure alliance against everybody
There
who
you
has
go, against their other teams. Exactly.
Spice.
Yeah, and then Shadowburn will be like, is there any DPS in the world more handsome, more greater than me? Nobody.
Question is, how terrible is Fissure at dancing?
Pretty bad, as far as I remember. I've already blocked it out of my memory, so that's how bad it was.
That could be a terrible dance duo between
Him and Shadowburn.
Yeah. Nice.
NYXL's already done. Like they've already completed the puzzle. They already have Exodia. They only need they only need like subs just in case they get sick or players they want to like trade up. But I think they're basically finished
for a while.
Yeah, they have Shenlong.
And it's weird too. Like it's not like they had like a good team just for like one season. It's like they've got a good bench. Like they've got Libero if they keep him. You know,
they're gonna keep Libero.
Potentially Flower.
Yeah.
Well, it's either between him and Flower for me. I don't think you keep four DPS members, especially.
I think they let Flower go. It doesn't matter how great Flower is. This is working. You don't split up a winning combo.
Yeah,
one or the other. And I said Libero, and I could see either one. I kind of lean towards Flower in the sense that he's been with the team for so long. I don't think the players even want to play, not necessarily don't want to play with Libero, but they would much prefer to play with somebody who they've played with before. Whether or not that's the same case, I have no idea. But I could see for me, it's either one. One of them has to go. And again, they're going to kind of perform the same way that Shadowburn and Fissure have. You know, they're going to go to another team and they're going to make that team really, really good.
Like getting Flower would be such a Team Liquid-esque signing, wouldn't it? Like from League of Legends, basically signing all these, these things. He's a demigod, so get this kid on. I think that also smells a little bit like London if Jack continues that route of
like
just
the best.
Yeah. So, no, but the question I have for NYXL really is like, how much is the structure and the coaching impacting our perception of these individual players' play? Because it's also probably they're receiving much different individual coaching, I would imagine, than others. They also probably approach the game very differently. And like if you're getting one-on-one coach in these situations, who could you put in there that would legitimately suck? Like who has so little talent that he couldn't shine in NYXL?
Besides the Shanghai Dragons.
Basically one of us. Like it sounds like you've also been branded by them.
This team is so bad. I can only my immediate response is to go to them when I think of like who is truly this bad. Like, oh yeah, Shanghai Dragons.
He hears the words bad and in two more
it's
ways
like a
than
synonym
one.
in my mind. It's like, oh, what is awful garbage? Yeah. But yeah, like I'm not. It's kind of weird because like their success has made it so that it's hard to parse how great their coaching is and how great their players are and how great their natural team synergy is. Right? Because like we have to remember, like even though they had some like janky things in like stage 1, Jonak was a rookie.
Yeah.
Like technically still is a rookie, right? Like. And like maybe those janky things, like those random dysynergic moments, just because he was new to the stage, like that's completely possible. And like by the time they get to stage 2, that's completely fixed. So is that because of an internal thing, like his internal skill, or is it because like he built that up, or is it because the coaches taught him that? We don't really know.
Yeah, it's hard to say.
Like. I do agree. Like NYXL, like they seem to have the best coaching, but we can't necessarily prove it one way or the other.
What I would really like to see is basically like a tortured player in Korea, like someone that really doesn't have that great of teammates, just being dropped in there and like receiving even more, resources. Like,
Fleta.
I mean, Fleta being dropped in there would be quite interesting. Yeah, but I mean, which malleable talent is there in Korea?
Here we go. Ready? You put Arhan in NYXL and see what he comes out next season.
Whew.
I mean, he is a true Wizard Young is a true genius. If he gets Arhan to be good.
Yeah, if you can kind of break that player down and make him into something that's going to be able to fit within that team, that's the ultimate test. Like, take someone who has a very clear and defined style that they're,
it's not
hell bent.
It's not enough for Wizard Young just to win the Overwatch League. Now he has to like give himself random challenges. I will
Exactly.
rehabilitate you, Arhan, and then after that, he's like, I'm gonna go rehabilitate this player. I'm going to save Gambler from himself. Like, he's gonna go through all the challenges just to prove he can.
Exactly.
I don't know if
Herculean
it's
feat.
impossible. It's like in my mind, it's like, so you basically have to be full Zen monk in the sense that you need to convince Arhan that there is actually no ego. Like, what you're feeling, what you're expressing towards your teammates doesn't exist. It's all an illusion. Wake up, wake up. And then you also need to convince him that there's actually everything is one thing, so he doesn't actually need to eat the meat. The meat is also part of that one thing that's everything. So you've fixed the second one too, right? That's basically how I would solve Arhan, I guess.
Wow. So we literally had to send him to a Tibetan like fucking Buddhist monk retreat, have him live up there for like 10 years, and then he'll come down a better player. Assuming, of course, like he doesn't degrade by then, but yeah, he will have found the meaning of life, or at the very least.
Or the Zen monks committed suicide.
or perhaps he ripped the Zen monk down from enlightenment. Who knows? One of them is going to come out the victor in this scenario.
Yes.
All right. Moving on to the next all-Korean team, London Spitfire. They've already started making the changes. They've already accepted that these 6 are it, so to say, or like these 6 are probably going to go on to the next, or is it 7? Forget the exact number. And then
I think it's 7.
Yeah, I think it's 7. Okay, so
Yeah.
I look at this team and I'm pretty sure like the answer is like they need leadership. And I think they need leadership on both ends of the equation. They need leadership inside of the game, and they need a coach.
Yeah.
100%.
Yeah, but like I'm not like when I look at the field, like it's not like I study Overwatch extensively, but like I look at it and I'm coming up blank on both.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's pretty absent, but and they've freed up plenty of room to add people, so I don't even know if you need to let players go, but I wonder if I don't know if it's going to be up to the org to whether or not the players want to stay. Do these players want to stay within this team? Again, if you're going to look at Shanghai and say that they've been scarred, if the playoffs don't do very well, which it's not kind of projected for them to have good playoffs, do they want to stay with London? I don't know. I don't know if they do.
I mean, Jack has a fat wallet, so I'm pretty sure they will.
I don't know with these kids, man. I don't know if with competitors, the money's great and everybody's got a price, but I think at the end of the day, these kids just want to compete. They just want to play. Like, if obviously they don't want to do it for absolutely nothing. But
listen, man, they let a bunch of the B teamers like start over them, so I don't necessarily know if they have that hunger. Nobody understands how that went. Like, nobody understands how that went. One day Bishop is trying to keep it together. Next day he's done, and all of a sudden people are shuffling into the starting roster for no reason. Like, I don't know.
One thing that I would find interesting is like them getting Element Mystic.
Oh,
Now, you can't get all of them, but
I mean,
the interesting thing
Jack
is
would try.
they have been. Yeah, I mean, yeah, some of them are age restricted, but yeah. The thing is with them, what I find interesting is that they've always been on the forefront of new metas, and they've been very innovative. So this creative, also effective understanding of metas has to come from somewhere. Now, if it's a player that instruments all of this, get him, right?
Mm-hmm.
Even if it's one of the 15-year-old guys, you can be a
Player
15-year-old
coach.
analyst, I guess.
Yeah, exactly.
But what's interesting is that their coach is, well, he goes by Startel Yun on Twitter, and then his name is EM Rush, so his name is Rush. But if I look at him on Wikipedia, he was the manager of Xanax for StarCraft 2.
That dude?
So,
Holy shit! I can't believe he's still alive. All right.
yeah. So, I don't know if he's the one like behind this, but it would be quite interesting if he could be in a coach position for London. Maybe he can figure something out, because like Element Mystic pioneered stuff like Orisa. Like most of the stuff we see now, how Orisa is played, this Ireland strategy, for instance, on Nepal or whatever, this is all Element Mystic's innovation. So,
yeah.
And it's not like that, for instance, like with the Orisa stuff, it's not like Fearless said, well, let's do that. We know that this is not true, because it also works with Pokpo, and they've refined the strategy further on. So it has to be something else, some other element, mystical element, if you want, that you could implement into that team and possibly enhance London that way. Because this guy apparently has been around for a long time. He knows how Korean esports works. So I'd hope he would have, you know, an idea, a structure that works and whatever.
It's interesting because he's even though he comes from Korean esports, he comes from the poor side. And what I mean by that is like Xenex is not like, it's not one of those Kesma teams with a shit ton of money.
Yes.
This guy's basically like from the ghetto in a sense. So
nice.
Like and like when you get guys like this, like they're incredibly ambitious, but and like they have a lot of grit to them in a sense. Like as far as I don't actually know if this is the same guy we're talking about, because there's like multiple guys who went from Xenex to Startail, but there was a story basically where like when Life was caught match fixing this guy, like he came out, like somebody asked him about it. He's like, yeah, like I used to have to control like Life's impulses because he had like crazy impulses. He was like that type of person, and so he doesn't necessarily know if there was like a person like that in KT Rolster, because that's when he started doing the match fixing, right? So he's just like a very good player manager, or maybe he is in fact the coach. Like, here's the weird thing about Korean esports is like when you look at other games and you look at the player-coach relations, players rarely have respect for coaches that did not play the game. They just don't. They just think in their minds, you never got this far, why would I listen to you, right? And so unless you're very charismatic, unless you have like the results are ready to back it up, like you've already won like a huge tournament without them,
right?
Like they won't necessarily give you that respect. But it's different in Korea. In Korea, obviously, you have the entire like hierarchical societal system. So because of that, you get in Korea specifically, you get a bunch of coaches that may not have played the game of whatever they're coaching, but get a lot of respect from their players, or like force a lot of respect. Like this happened with like I Love Uv when he went to like from StarCraft to League of Legends, right? And so maybe that might be the case. But in either case, actually, this team does probably need like that type of strong personality. Now we're just like theory guessing because I don't think any of us have insight into this guy, right? So that's a definite like chance, and if it doesn't work, you can just fire him. So
I had one run-in with him that was hilarious. I was like on Twitter, and Element Mystic has this player called Guard. He was nuts on Sombra, and I'm like, we just reviewed all this footage, and I wrote like a tweet. If I take anything away from this VOD review, it's that Guard is a nuts Sombra. And obviously, I didn't tweet anyone, nothing, right? He didn't follow me before. I don't know how he got there, but he just replies, "Guard is best," and then followed me. It's like, how do you find that tweet even? What's going on? Do you feel the force that someone like
Yeah.
praise your player? What's going on?
Yeah, some people are fiends. Who knows? Yeah, that's actually that's a pretty good choice. Considering like there's a lack of choice, and unless you're breaking the bank for Krusty, which also a good choice, but I'm not sure they will. Like that could work, right?
Yeah.
Right. So
Definitely.
Houston Outlaws, do they finally go Korean? I don't think they will, but
I already don't understand why they did.
Yeah, no, it doesn't make any sense.
I completely forgot Arhan is Korean because he's so bad. But yes,
You basically have to give up your purity ring of, only being American, and you can't even market yourself that way, right? Unless you obviously say or find out that Arhan is a weep and therefore he's American.
Yeah. Well, thankfully for them, Arhan is so bad, like nobody even remembers like he's part of this team.
Yeah, but I mean, people are saying, and I have to admit, I didn't watch all his performances, that he was pretty okay on most.
Yeah, he was okay, but like I don't see how he improves the team. You know what I mean? No. Like it's just an addition that stagnates you. I don't see how this guy improves you. If you're gonna bring him in to help with Tyrong and make him a coaching staff member, I think that's perfectly fine. But putting him in the server to clog up communication and to okay isn't good enough with this team. You actually have to improve it.
Yeah, and this team isn't like Gladiators. There's like places you can improve that are like that should get you to the next level. It's not like they're trying to hit the top, right? Obviously, I don't know why Clockwork is still here. I mean,
Clockwork is less egregious than Mendo, but
exactly. Like you could salvage.
I don't know why Mendo is here either. Like, they have a problem. It's the fact that they like buying a bunch of DPS players that don't do much.
And that's not necessarily even a problem for like to fill. If you want to stay an A base, I think there's a couple of talents that you can just slot in there, and they're definitely delivering better results than those two players did, right?
Yeah.
So let's think. Who's a sick tracer in the NA scene? It's like obvious.
Give me Jaru.
Jaru is one of those names that I immediately thought of when thinking about this initially. It's like, I'm gonna pick up that kid if that's your goal.
He's looking for a team too.
Yeah.
Maybe Gravy, maybe McGravy. I think his Divas was pretty good back in the day. His Tracer wasn't bad. You can make it serviceable. He seems pretty motivated to kind of compete. Give him a shot. Put him. I mean, he couldn't be worse than Clockwork or Mendo. You know what I mean? Like, there's not a lot to kind of live up to there. So
Mendo could have been a regular in Shanghai Dragons. So
he's red again.
Yeah.
The thing is, what I basically like, I don't want to give too much of my content away, but basically my idea was that, for instance, that AKM and Taimo being on the same team isn't even that problematic, because if you know the situations where Taimu's on and where he isn't, then in those situations where he isn't, you just put in AKM, who just plays a very solid style, and you get the same performance most of the time, and then in 5% of the cases he pops off, right?
Yeah,
so
exactly.
If you can find someone like that for Linkser, so when Linkser is on, you play him, and then in other times you have someone to back him up, because he's also definitely an inconsistent player, which, by the way, is not at all a problem. Like, to be consistently super amazing is very, very hard. So if I have the choice between someone that is just consistently here and someone that goes like this constantly, I want that guy. Because if you're thinking about the incentive structure in playoffs, it doesn't really fucking matter if I'm 6, right? But what matters is if my player peaks here and I'm in the middle of playoffs, in the middle of the finals, that's when I get the money, right? So you want these. I would rather have these inconsistent players, especially for playoff scenarios. For league stuff, well, over the season you probably can do with consistency, and Houston Outlaws doesn't have that, and that's a problem. And whenever Linkser isn't basically almost flattering, then then
there's a clear ceiling to this team, right?
yes.
Definitely.
Right.
And adding Arhan doesn't increase that ceiling. It triggers me to no end.
It's basically like a lateral move that wastes a slot, right?
Yeah, and you've already got wasted slots, so I don't think you have, you don't have the room to kind of just have more,
Wasted slot.
excess weight. Yeah, it doesn't make any sense to me.
Yeah, like there's nothing wrong with inconsistency, assuming you're hitting more than like Skadoodle, who hits like 1 out of like 9 tournaments or whatever, like something ridiculous, right? Like the rest of the rest of the team is pretty solid, so you just need like you just need like a strong star player, I guess, like another one to back links her up, and you're probably good to go. Like,
yeah, I mean, you could look at San Francisco. If we go back to what we were talking about with San Francisco, like if we're gonna get rid of Baby Bay or Dante, either one of them could slot into Houston and be okay.
Yeah,
I think Dante probably would be better than
That's
Baby
a
Bay,
good one.
but either
That's a
one
good
still kind of fit.
Like,
Yes.
either of them would work. So yeah, like I think that's probably where they go. They also have to get rid of Arhan for sure. Like, not only is he doing nothing, he's also ruining your like image as this hot-blooded American like team. Like,
Sure.
Yeah.
and Mendo, like I don't know why you're here. Like you're just getting paid charity. Yeah. Last team I guess is Boston Uprising. We already talked about it a little bit, but basically they just need a widow, right?
Yeah, they need a widow. I think they're another one of these teams that probably needs to kind of shed some of the slots. Do I ever see Snow playing? Unfortunately not.
No.
Do I see Avast? Maybe every once in a while. And you've got
Twitter.
Aimgod and Neko. Yeah, well, yeah, he's great social media, dude. He's great. He's actually another one of those players that actually could see actually being like a solid player coach. He actually seems fairly articulate, and he's smart. So I think he could be a coach if he wanted to be, but I don't know that that's the case. And yeah, getting another DPS member to kind of slot in and play that dedicated hit scan role. Again, I look at San Francisco. If we're gonna get rid of one of them, it'd be another good team for them to go to.
Yeah.
So yeah, getting a support, maybe getting a replacement for Gomsu if he needs to take a break every once in a while because it's a long season and sooner or later they're going to want a vacation. So getting a feasible or a serviceable main tank wouldn't be bad. So it's again building up that bench.
Yeah. A questionable thing for me for Boston is how many resources are they willing to go into getting more players? Like, there's a reason like everybody like rated this team so poorly before the season started. It's because like these are a bunch of unknown players for the most part. So it's like, I get the feeling they're going to do something like that again.
I mean, let's say that they do. Let's say that they just go and they find some kind of tier 2 player who doesn't really have much of a shot. They bring him on, see that he's pretty okay, and they bring him on the roster. As long as you're going to use them and try to develop them, I don't think it could be that bad. They've had a fairly positive track record with their flex tank. Seemed really good.
Yeah.
Came out pretty well. They went to Korea, they saw Aimgod, brought him over, pretty good. Neko, same way. If I was going to quiz, a bunch of the community on where Neko played before this, I don't think many of them would be able to tell you where. So they've been good at scouting, and I think they'll continue with that. But are they going to grab like Flower, give me Fleta, give me big shot like high ball like names? No, they're not going to do that. They're just going to work from the bottom up and try to like money ball it in a sense.
Yeah, but
and
like
so far it's been all right.
They don't have Krusty anymore. That's like my question.
Yeah, that doesn't make much sense either. But
I guess we'll see because we'll see next season exactly how much Krusty like impacted this team, because obviously we've already seen some of it now, but like if they go this approach of getting like a more unknown talent and they don't like become great, you're gonna have to say Krusty was part of the reason, right?
Yeah, for sure, 100%.
Right.
Yeah.
All right, I think that's every fucking team, like all 12 somehow. All right.
Did we get there?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, we did.
Oh, holy shit. Wow. All right. I guess I'll end it on one last question.
Sure.
What is the scale of percentage you would put Overwatch League as a game in terms of the attributes you need to be a successful team? So I'm talking about strategy, skill, and team play.
Strategy, skill, and team play. Let's see. I think team play is definitely the biggest one.
Yeah.
Mhm.
I think it's like, for me, it's like team play, strategy skill. Like, I don't think you need to be some sort of like hot shot, like crazy. I think you can be, but if I was gonna build a team, that's probably the way that I'd build it. Be like 60, I don't know, 20.
Yeah,
60,
yeah, I'm
30,
thinking
10,
the same.
like that.
Like 60,
Yeah,
20,
yeah.
20 or something, or 60, 25,
Something
15.
like that.
Yeah.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Well, all right, because that's kind of like where I was, what I was thinking about was like, you don't like when I look at a bunch of these good teams, these solid teams, like, I look at some of these teams that have like a much more talent but aren't really doing much with it. It kind of tells me like the team play isn't there, or like the strategy isn't there. Like in the case of like London, or and these other teams of like weaker individual players are doing better than that they are. But then also you have the case where like if you do get those 2 points, and then you get an exceptional player, you're basically like break open the game, which is like what NY.
And you become New York Excel.
Yeah,
Exactly.
And you become NYXL. So like, yeah. So all right, just wanted to ask your opinion on that, because that's kind of it's a weird game. Overwatch is like, it doesn't, like, it feels like it's pretty balanced within those directions, because like when you think about it, it's like obviously team play would be the most important in a 6-game team, right, in a 6-player game, and strategy is pretty important, because like you have to figure, if you don't have the strategy, then you can't get the rest of it going. But this game still does allow for individual like pop-offs, right?
Sure, yeah.
Right.
And that also explains the importance of coaches, really, because even in the individual skill component of that,
Breakdown
separation, is there's still something. So, for instance, I know Krusty does a lot of individual coaching, so he even impacts that percentage, right? So definitely does team play, and definitely also strategy. I mean, usually people would think of strategy as a coach thing, and then team play, maybe the players need to intermingle in some way and then figure it out for themselves. No, that's actually,
it's all
the coach can definitely.
The coach has an impact on all 3 areas, but like there is a point to be made. Like team play can only be pushed so far. Like there is something like a natural team player chemistry. So like if you're an exceptional coach, though, you can push that farther than others. So
yeah, the thing is, what I will say though is, in my idea, if I'm GM, I sign my coach first and let him pick.
100%, yeah.
Because then he also can pick players towards his
style,
style of coaching.
Yeah.
Right. I legitimately, I think the way this esport has been presenting itself, you could make an argument that the most or the best paid person on a team should be the head coach, not the star player.
Yeah.
I think legitimately a coach has more impact on Overwatch than even the sickest star player has.
Yeah. Like all right, so brings me to another question then. So Wizard Hyung or Jonak?
Well, the problem with that is I don't know how much Pavane does,
Yeah.
So if they come as a pair, by the way, that's also a great thing. Like people say, well, we don't know, maybe his ability to build that pair and to sort of work and do things that the other can't is also a quality of a working professional, right? So the thing is that obviously Wizard Hyung is the more extroverted towards the community person, so we don't actually know what he does versus to Pavane. But yeah, I actually okay, so if you say Jonak or Wizard Hyung, and I can't,
you have all the other pieces, right? Like
and I can instead have Bedosin or Neko. I got Wizard Hyung.
Yep, same.
Right.
You have a coach that good that can scout that well. I'd actually be interested to see if anybody's actually put in a bid for him, because what a lot of people kind of take for granted is that he is fairly fluent in English. Like he could go to another team and potentially transform them. Potentially, obviously, it would be the kind of Herculean effort that we're speaking to, where let's say he goes to, I don't know, Florida, and transforms them into a top 4 team. That would be insane and it would be crazy, but he'd be able to do it because he can actually communicate with them efficiently.
It does make me curious if like the way the Overwatch League teams work, they're probably going to try to find shortcuts to success. And
Probably.
as far as I can tell, one of the biggest shortcuts to success is getting a Korean coach.
Yeah,
Right? So
definitely.
if you're going to get a Korean coach, you're probably getting a Korean translator, even if you're like a team like the Outlaws, who's like almost all speak English, but their coach is Korean, right? So it's a curious state of affairs, I guess. Like even if how do I explain this? But basically, Korea is going to rule the world one way or the other, whether it's through their players or whether it's through their coaches. That's all I'm saying. All right.
Sound.
All right. I think that about ends it. Hit like the 3-hour mark. You got any closing remarks?
Not really. No. Thanks for having us on, or at least thanks for me for having me on.
Mm-hmm.
It's been fun. Hopefully we can continue this next season. It'd be fun.
Yeah, sure. All right. See you guys later.